Life is good, but it can be better. Welcome everyone to back to Cinematic Realms. I'm your host, John Webster. With me, as always, is my fellow cinephile, Amy Blackfire, and we're joined today by returning special guest, Carole Brown. How are you doing, Carole?
I'm well. How is everybody? Happy New Year.
Happy
Happy
New
New
Year.
Year.
Um, yeah, it's God, it's like I started off with that line as a joke, but it's like I think life really actually can be better. We're heading into the new year, and we're all kind of hoping for that. But yeah, it's and this is our first stream ever on this channel talking about a new film, actually, which is kind of cool. I like starting off the new year that way. And I have to say, like, I didn't expect this to be a divisive choice because before it came out, I'm like, how could it be? It's like, uh,
The first one was so everyone loved. I mean, I heard
yeah,
only good things about the first one, and the
yeah,
first one was a big hit. So yeah, when the John and I were actually talking about this, the initial reviews and Rotten Tomatoes, all that was like just couldn't say enough about how amazing this film was. And then kind of the general public, the peanut gallery, if you will, watched it, and then had all sorts of problems with it, which we'll talk about, and some of them are valid. um so but
but
yeah,
I
I was surprised
yeah,
myself.
I guess I want to let's just start off with like general impressions. Carol, since you're a guest, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I would say overall, I like the first one better than the second one. Just from a macro standpoint, but I enjoyed the movie. I am still a little mystified over the 1984 moniker. It could have been in any year. It wasn't there. I mean, there were some 80s references that were in there, but I didn't find it spectacularly. Yeah, that's 84, and all of that's 84-ish. The clothes, some of the cars. I'm from DC, so I was having a little bit of nostalgia of, hey, that's Georgetown, and I remember that Commander Salamanders, and I was shopped there, and Sam Goodies, and yeah, okay, great. Post Office Pavilion, because before it got trumped, I used to go there and hang out. Um, but I didn't. I agree with you, Micah. I think there could have been a little bit more on the whole cheetah aspect, but overall, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I was just questioning the 1984 moniker. Loved Chris Pine, loved him in it. I loved their dynamic. Um, Pedro Pascal, I was trying to disconnect myself from looking for a little green Yoda, you know, for him to be chasing, since he was again a father with a child. But I would say overall, it was an enjoyable movie. There were some themes that were in there. It was Hans Zimmer music, so of course I was geeking out on some of the
We are
time
gonna
that
we're
he
gonna
was
talk about
using
that.
and that he was doing. That was really, he did a motif on the original Wonder Woman theme that he took and modernized into a more major key that I enjoyed. So I would say overall, yeah, I mean, it was okay. I don't understand the controversy part, so I'm curious to see where that's coming in.
Yeah, I do want to ask. I'm throwing this out to the chat real quick. We're talking about her. Amy was talking about her audio levels and stuff. Let me know how mine is as well, because I noticed on my last couple streams I was louder than everybody else. So I just want to make sure that I didn't overcompensate and turn it down too low. So just let us
Yeah,
know
help
if,
us out, chat.
yeah.
Because
Uh,
we in StreamYard sometimes it sounds totally perfect to us, and then people in the chat will be like, "Amy, you sound like a robot," and I'll be like, "What? I don't. I sound fine." So yeah, yay. Okay, looks like we're sounding good. Thank you, chat. You're the best.
Okay. Well, Kate's saying I'd sound good. Aaron is as well, but can I trust her?
That's
My
always the
nemesis.
question.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, thank you, Micah. That's very
Aw.
nice of you to say. Um, okay. So, Amy, what did you General impressions of the movie. What did you think?
Yeah, so I saw the first one in theaters with my friend Jenna. Everyone in the chat knows Jenna. I'm obsessed with her. And hey, she just came here and told me I'm a little quiet. All right, guys, I'm going to turn it. You're going to see this live. Turning it up now. Okay, how does that sound? Chat. All right, so I saw the first one with Jenna. I dressed up. We had a great time. And so the second one, we did like a Zoom watch where we were, we had basically, I had my like laptop right here, and I would look over at Jenna every now and then fondly while we were watching it. And so we talked about it afterwards, and I think we agreed on a lot of things. And one of the main thing was, how much we really liked Cheetah as an antagonist to Wonder Woman. She's a pretty big deal in the comics, and she's kind of always gotten the short end of the stick. Like in the Justice League animated series, Cheetah was kind of a C level villain, but in the comics, she was really badass and really like important to Wonder Woman's kind of struggle with good and evil, right? And so I think it just generally needed more Cheetah. Was the first thing that I was not okay with. But what I really liked, I think, was the callback. My favorite part was the callback to the invisible jet, which is Wonder Woman's thing. And I did see a lot of people saying, okay, so in the 70s version, she's driving the piloting the invisible jet. And in this one, it's her, hot boyfriend brought back from the dead. And I was like, yeah, but I think that was probably the best scene just because it was kind of a sign of hope for her, and seeing the fireworks going on. And what I really liked, I think, is, I've talked about this with John a lot, themes that are set up in the beginning that then pay off and aren't left hanging. And this is kind of a good example of that working, because they had the whole truth as being, not cheating. Being truthful was a theme at the beginning because she kind of cheated to try and win that competition in the beginning. And so then later we get truth being very important to the overall storyline. So I always like when themes pay off.
Yeah, and I don't want this to become a thing where I lay into like another brand of comic book films.
What could you possibly be referring to, John?
But I really loved that this film was tackling different themes and and was communicating ideas, and so it wasn't just it's we're building up to a big action scene, and I feel like there were things that Patty Jenkins wanted to say with this film, and when you have a filmmaker of Patty Jenkins' caliber, you should expect that. So I actually really enjoyed that. It's not to say the film was perfect by any means, but there was a lot to love here, I think, and I guess I'll go ahead and say my piece on it as far as general impressions. While I was watching it, I wasn't like reading online, at least not for like the first half of the movie. I think it's a sign of our culture that I couldn't help myself but grab my phone at a certain point in the movie and go on Twitter. And then I started to see a couple of comments, and I think you're right, Amy, there are some issues that people have with this film that are perfectly valid, and we'll talk about those, but overall, like, I just loved how sort of majestic and romantic and sort of sweeping and emotional the film was. I liked that. Now, I'm not well versed in the comics, so as far as wanting a character like Cheetah to have more time, I didn't come to it with those sort of expectations of of that, but I really did love her character and her relationship with Diana, and how that sort of starts off the film. I loved Pedro Pascal in this movie because I think he was just a riot. He was a lot of fun to watch, and I loved that there was like an emotional core to his story. He, as much as he does deplorable things throughout the film, you always sort of understood where he was coming from, and the film wasn't afraid to sort of anchor him emotionally with, the story of his, him and his son and all that. So I do want to talk about that. But yeah, overall, I very much enjoyed it. I'm going to be alone in this probably, but I even hazard to say that there were parts of it that I enjoyed more than the original film. So
Blasphemy.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Sorry.
I will say, though, talking about the 80s feel in the 1984, and a lot of people didn't quite, I think Carole had mentioned that it could have kind of been put in any decade, but I would say that kind of the one thing that made it more 80s for me was the idea of life is good, but it could be better. Greed is good. Get as much as you can. 1980s kind of feel. Whereas if you did like Wonder Woman 1965 or something like that, it would have been more about kind of civil rights and such. But this, it's about everyone gets a TV, everyone gets a refrigerator. How about 2 TVs? How about 2 cars? It was kind of so I've read the 1980s was a time of American capitalism kind of on cocaine. And frankly, a lot of people were on cocaine. So,
well, that, and I think it also was a kind of a riff on Orwell's 84, because there was a lot of, again, from someone who lived through it, we were joking about a lot of things in 84. Those of us who had read the book are like, but there was a lot of Big Brother watching you, but we weren't perceiving it as such. It was in the middle of, Reagan's administration, and there were a lot of controversial things that were happening. But I love that the visual cue of 1984 in Georgetown, DC was very bright, technicolor, comic booky, and it was funny because they actually got certain sections, of what was happening at that time correct. And it's funny, there was a president's shop in the post office pavilion, and they always had whatever president big paper cutouts with all of the stuff set up, and it was the American flags and all that stuff. It was, yeah, Kate Berdinsky was like, shit, Diana, because there were so many things that you could
he
have
didn't
told me
know.
that.
Yeah,
You
you
were
could have
telling
just
me
told me that.
about parachute
She's like,
pants.
don't worry, they won't
Not
see
that.
us. And then she goes,
Um,
oh, wait, actually, there's something called radar.
there's
Anyway, point is, they can see you no matter
couple
what.
things,
But see,
but
this is
it was beautifully framed, so for those of us who lived it and they're from DC, you recognized the canal, the canal bridge going down M Street, Wisconsin Avenue to M. You recognize that vista, as you're looking down M Street towards Foggy Bottom. You recognized the Hirshhorn Museum, that big circular museum. There is no metro stop there. I was like, okay, here we go. That's not what the metro cars look like back then. So it's like, I'm sitting there trying to remember in 84, was LaFont Plaza even open then? I want to say no, it wasn't. So it was like, so where was that station? Because that station didn't exist. So I'm like, okay, suspend your belief. Suspend your belief.
But we are technically in an alternate 1984 because we do have a Wonder Woman, a different president.
That's a cop out. That's always a cop
No,
out.
I'm going with
DC, if you're going to go 84 in DC. Now, the thing is I remember when they were filming it, I was downtown when they were filming it, when they were blocking out certain sections of M Street, Wisconsin Avenue, and they put up all the facades, and standing there going, I used to go to that store. I used to go in there. I used to shop there, and it was good to see it. But I think it was that Orwellian reference. It was that feeling. I agree with Amy. There was that, everybody was the whole parental thing. If I throw money at the kid, and keep them busy with other people, work, 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 work. Everyone became workaholics trying to get ahead, all this type of thing. So, okay, but I think they could have tied that a little closer. Now, the whole Cold War stuff that was happening, yeah, that was a thing. It was definitely overplayed, and the overindulgent wish get what you want, everything, you know, definitely we're paying some of the pains for that overindulgence from the 80s even now. Because we're going through it now as a country and as a world. But I will say that I agree with John that it was a much more emotional Diana. It was what's happened from when she lost Steve to how she's been living her life, and she's doing her duty, but she wasn't happy. And how that kind of came in. And when she was on Themyscira and they were telling her, you cheated, that's not a way to win. You're not ready. The world's not ready for you yet. So when will I win? When you're ready.
Yeah, and
You will be there when you're ready. Everything comes in time. And how much time she's seen. That was intense.
Yeah,
and
and I like to see this in comparison to her in Justice League, which was supposed to be around this time. So you see the difference in her confidence and her happiness. Obviously, the 80s, she was, for her, it was like yesterday that she lost Steve, even though 40 years had passed.
Mhm.
and actually that's something I really like. They go through the effort to show, like, you see all the, the pictures, in her apartments, and it's very evident that she didn't get to really say goodbye to Steve in a way that was satisfactory to her. She didn't want to say goodbye at all. But it's so sort of, she's been sort of doing, helping people out through all these years, and doing, what she feels is right. But she's very much been stuck back there, and living in the past. And I feel like this movie was her being able to finally move on.
Aaron was commenting on my glass of wine.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
But I do want to sort of start off and talk about the opening sequence of the film, because I kind of knew I was going to love this movie from the opening, because it's so great. It's like, we didn't get to, none but a lucky few got to, or maybe unlucky few, who knows, got to see this in the theater. Uh but even at home on my TV screen, that opening with the IMAX framing and everything, it felt huge and just epic. And yeah, Hans Zimmer's score for this
Yeah.
film, like, I'm going to go on and on about that, because I think this is his best work in years.
And it's interesting because how he chose thematically, he stayed in the same time signature as the original Wonder Woman theme, but this one was much more hopeful, much more innocent, much more, grand. It was very expansive. But I was noticing, because it comes up again, the overlay of the time signatures, because you've got a base of driving bass of 16th notes. Above that is quarter time at quarter notes, and then you've got this duple over a triplet that's going 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 3 over this.
Carole, you are making me
So
so happy right now.
excellent,
Yeah,
so it's
I
like
love
one
it.
two
Yeah.
1 2 3, and so you're listening, but then you can still hear the daga daga. I mean, so it's very
Yeah.
reminiscent of the original score. It's the same meter, it's the same time signature, but he's rotated it to go
Yeah.
from where she was to where she is and where she came from. So it was
Yeah.
interesting how it brought all that together. And from a musician standpoint, it's like all I could think of was I would love to play that, because it was extremely jazz over almost like a modern baroque aspect to it that gave that modern with that ancient. So that was, I think, also thematically going all the way through the film. So Hans was killing it, and of course, I love Hans Zimmer. We could sit here and listen to the score to Pirates of the Caribbean, and I will bore your whole chat out for life with
You
this.
won't bore me
They're
out.
the chat is very used to music talk. But I think, Carol, you're really touching on something that's really hard to do as a composer, which is to use something that the audience is used to
Hmm.
and alter it so that it's different but just as enjoyable, if not more. And he totally kills that in this
And
movie.
recognizable,
Yes.
and recognizable because you can hear it underneath, which is the original was in a minor progression. This is all stayed within a major, almost like a uh, modulation where it's gone to almost the sympathetic key, but then there's those little tiny aspects of that minor dissonance as they were trying to go through, the 5 chord and the 6 chords as they were trying to reconcile her conflict. So you could hear it underneath when she was little baby Diana running through everything and all hopeful, and then she got knocked off the horse,
Yeah.
and what shall she do? And it's like, dang, she was killing it, but she is just a little girl. And you're in a society where everyone is great, but to be even more so, to achieve. And I love the fact that they brought back all of our favorite people who we lost in, the Justice League,
Yeah.
and they were defending against Steppenwolf. So to see them all again, and Robin Wright was there, and everyone was there, and listening to the story that they were trying to tell her,
Yeah.
that everyone's been that little kid who just wanted to skip over that, or I'm the youngest of 26 cousins, and always running, trying to keep up, and they're just like, grow. We're not waiting for you. Grow, keep up, grow, whatever, and just wanting to skip ahead. And then the adults telling you, just take your time, take your time. And even Asteria took her time to become this heroine, this icon in their culture. And I love the fact that they kept referencing that in our culture, and all of that groundwork was being laid. And I'm like Amy. I love, yes, very much a Roman amphitheater, Wheezy. And it was so grand in the way they were doing it on the edge of a cliff with everything going on there. But I very much like the fact that these themes were being set up and they were being established. And at different points, the themes were being called back. But the
Yeah.
resolution came in a almost a predictable way, but not. So you just looked at Diana like, dang it, can't she catch a break? I mean, she's just not catching a break. And it's almost as if she had to keep repeating that theme until she learned the lesson. And
Yeah,
once she learned the lesson, everything seemed to come together.
I do want to say, like, I looked at that amphitheater and I'm like, couldn't you have done that for Marine and Game of Thrones? Because that was like, man, that was like the stuff of dreams come true. The how big and vast that was. But I do want to say, like, of that opening, like, she only fails because she keeps looking back,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
what she's doing.
Yeah.
Later on in the story, she's spending all her time looking back at
She's not
what she had.
focusing on what she's
Absolutely. What
doing
she's doing
and
now.
what's
Exactly.
coming. She's just, I'm beating the grown-ups. It's like, and in that one moment that you were not keeping your eye in front of you, you get knocked off.
Yeah.
And then how do you recover from that failure? Because sometimes you need the failure to grow. And she
Exactly.
needed that. She
Yeah.
needed that. And I love
Yeah.
that she stopped her, because there will be no way to explain that. Your blue flag didn't progress.
The whole way.
Everyone can see what's
Yeah.
going on. And all she could see was, I just want to win,
Yeah.
which is kind of
Yeah.
what happened with Cheetah. I just
Exactly.
want this. I'm not thinking about anything else, just this. So I love how all of these themes kept being picked up and dropped in different places. So that I enjoyed.
And I think also the older Diana, we see her not so obsessed with winning. She has kind of learned from the failure that, we see in the very first the very first scene. And we also see, I think, really a difference in passion. She's not passionate about really anything until Steve comes back, which is one of my gripes with the movie is let's stop bringing back the love interest of the female heroine. Let's just let her be a hero by herself. But I do think that it did work in some ways, being that she was so focused on the past that she was walking through her life like a zombie in the 80s, basically. And
See, I
so
didn't
to
have a
get passion
problem with
again.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with that. I think we had a conversation, I can't remember when it was, and what it did for me is that it worked because it called out to her that she was stuck looking back, you know,
Yeah.
and it took him being brought forward to make her realize how much she was stuck in the past. And there is a reference in Deep Space Nine. Star Trek fans, forgive me for crossing um,
Oh, how
uh,
dare you?
properties here, folks. But I think we talked about this when Cisco on the pilot of Deep Space Nine, and he lost his wife at the Battle of Wolf. I think it's 859359. I can't remember the number, but as he goes through everything, he keeps having a reference to him saying, "You exist here. You can't go forward because you exist here." And anyone who's been through grief, anyone who's, well, hell, 2020, who's been through trauma, it depends on your process of working through that grief as to whether or not you're going to be able to go forward in your life. And Diana started doing things. She never dealt with her grief. So she was existing there. So I think it was important for Steve to come forward. And it wasn't that he was rescuing her, she was kicking butt.
Yeah,
And he
and
knew enough to stay out of the way. I wouldn't mess with her if I were you.
that's one of my favorite parts of this movie is that he is totally following her like
Hmm.
the whole way. There's not really, except when he realizes that they need to have basically a talk about that this isn't working and that she needs to let him go. But otherwise, like throughout the entire film, he's just following her lead. It's like, that's a good idea.
359. Thank you, Alicia.
Let's go ahead and do that. And I like that he wasn't trying to like be the man and assert control of the situation. He's just kind of along for the ride.
I totally obviously agree with everything Carole just said, and I think it would pay off if in the third movie he stays dead. But if they try and bring him back in the third movie, then all of
I don't
this
think they will.
amazing
No.
analysis
Yeah.
that Carole has worked on would have, all of the themes that she has picked up on would have been at a loss. You know what I'm saying? So as long as Steve stays dead, then yes, I think that he did bring something to this movie, and he taught her the lesson of not looking back, like she was, in the very first scene when she was looking back and then got, pwned in the face by a branch, right? But yeah, and I also think like I think we really should just mention now that they should have just made him have his own body by having someone
Yeah, I didn't
else's
understand
body.
that.
They were committing rape. There's really
I do want
way
to
to
say
say it.
something like because obviously the execution of that is very wrong and problematic, and people are right who complain about that. But I also see what they were going for. I think it's part of this whole thing where she's accepting a lie. That's you know it's this whole thing of there's a price for everything. She says, I only see you. It's part of this whole thing where she gets him back, but it's not in a completely whole some way. And I think it's part of her learning this lesson. Thematically, that's what they're going for. Execution wise, it's quite bad because of
And
what's
I'll,
actually
I'll
happening.
I'll go along with that. I like that point, John. Thank you for pointing that out, because in a way, what popped into my head was Meet Joe Black. Because when I don't know if you've seen that movie, it's derived
My,
from the movie Death
I've
Takes a
seen it.
Holiday.
I've seen it because my mom loves that movie. So
It's
I've seen it.
beautifully done. The original, which is more humorous, and then the more modern version with Anthony Hopkins and Brad Pitt and Claire Forlani. It's a beautiful movie. If you've never seen this movie, please watch this movie, because the cost is what happened to the person whose body you took. And death was like, it was convenient. But in this sense of her living this lie, what about that man? What happened to him? And it was interesting how at the end that kind of reconciled itself. But
And the ending is
I
kind of
agree with
why
that.
the ending is also why I end up having an issue with it myself, is because it's like it's a failure on her part to kind of recognize that, yeah, you did this thing that was not right. And I feel like there wasn't any awareness of that. So it's like it doesn't really. I don't think it works.
I just think that after years since 2017, this constant talk of consent that we've had, that this is not something we should see on the screen anymore. I frankly, Jenna made the point that she was losing her power, so she was giving something up. You could have had it something like he gets his own body, but like he's like a vampire. He can only be out during the night or some shit. Like you could have done so many different things, but instead you put him in someone else. And so I'm just, I think that one aspect, and of course we can also get to the arguments about the complaints about how race was presented in the movie, but I think this part specifically was a very quick fix that someone in the writers room should have spoken up, and maybe they did, and they were shot down. I don't know, but no, like, Patty Jenkins, you should have, like, you paid attention to the Me Too movement, right? Come on, girl.
I don't know. I didn't have that same experience with it, other than it was kind of weird. Why is it in a different guy's body? But I like what John was saying. I like the Meet Joe Black aspect of it. It was just another price. It was her believing a lie, her not thinking, look at what someone else gave up for you to have this, in addition to her losing her powers. So
and
it was
that's
just,
It was
I don't
really
know, it
creepy
kind
in
of
the
worked for
end,
me.
though, when they met each other, and she was like, "Hey," like, I was like, that
No,
was a
she
little
was looking at him like, who are you? Because she couldn't see
yeah.
him.
But we
yeah.
know as the audience, it was
I
just a
know
little
that.
strange.
I know that some people had that reaction to that end scene where they think that she's all like, "Hey, I had sex with you." That wasn't my
That's not
read
how I read it. I'm
on
just
it.
saying when I looked
Yeah.
at that, I went, "Hey," like that's weird. That was my
I
reaction.
was glad that she didn't, hey, let me move on with you. You look like the guy I was with and wearing the clothes I picked out. I was happy that she was like, you know what? That was a good, you have your life. I'm 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 sorry for my part in that. But to go back a minute, um, I like the juxtaposition of baby Diana having to, learn a lesson, and then here she is, fighting crime, but yet she's hiding. And don't I'm trying to think of the timing of this. When was the conversation that she had with Bruce Wayne about you're hiding who you are in the Justice League? And he had to kind of clock her and say, you're getting on me about wearing a cowl and a mask, but yet you're not living your life, as well. So I don't know where this fits within the time frame of 1984 and Justice League, but I love that they go from that to her, doing her crime fighting, again hiding, doing what she even said it. I do my duty. I'm happy to do it. I'm just not fulfilled, if you will. And then you go and you see Barbara in all of her nerdy wonderfulness, and so smart, so this, but so invisible. So here's a woman who's choosing not to be seen, and here's a woman who is invisible because of who she is. And I just love that juxtaposition, because the two of them were kind of paralleling with each other, and eventually the conflict between them of, here you see the price of the choice that you've made. What do? You know, Do you renounce that? Do you embrace that, but accept all the costs? And it was interesting watching them, you know, meet up and then go through their process. Um, I just like how it was building and layering everything up. So the emotional aspect of the growth of these two women, I thought it was well done.
Yeah, and I definitely want to speak on that, but I just want to cap off the previous conversation with saying, because I think I have a reputation for, if I like a movie, I'll defend every aspect of it to the death. I side with Amy on this. I think this was an easy fix. There was a better way to do that part of the story with Steve coming back. And so I tend to look at that as, even though I see what they were going for, I see it as a misfire. And I think somebody should have said, maybe we can do this a little differently. Um, so yeah, I'll go ahead and say that I'm not crazy about that part. No, definitely. And somebody pointed out that if the sexes had been reversed, boy, oh boy, would there be noise. A
Yeah,
lot.
a lot
So,
more than there was. Yeah, there's
yeah.
definitely a double standard, a need by society to protect women, and yet men are seen as, well, I'm sure he enjoyed it kind of thing, which is not what we're doing anymore. So, but
Um,
we can move
yeah,
on.
yeah.
But I think that was important to address, especially since these conversations have been in the public discourse. Um, but I do think that there were times to me that the movie kind of felt a little bit uneven. Even though we were able to kind of find these themes that worked throughout the movie, there, I, the whole part of men, kind of like catcalling Barbara after she makes her wish and everything, was a little bit overdone at some points. Like, we do see Diana in other movies. Guys are kind of into her, but they like basically sprayed her with like pheromones in this movie or something,
Hmm.
because everyone was like, damn girl, dang, ooh, like every single guy that she walks by, like one of those guys statistically had to be gay and wasn't interested. I'm just saying. Like, it was just every single guy in DC. Like, look, Gal Gadot is hot. I'm not saying she's not. I would never catcall her, but in my mind I would do it. Just don't say it out loud, men. But it's like, I feel like what the problem is, over enhancing certain aspects of kind of the way that men treated women in this, that I found a little bit weird. And also the glow up of this huge theme that they really played on with Barbara, where you just take off her glasses, change your hair, and like put on some makeup. And it's like, oh, she was pretty the whole time, kind of like she's all that, kind of rom-com theme. So I didn't know if they were playing off of that or if they were fully going into it. But it's a little bit of a tired trope, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel like I should stand back from trying to examine that with my sort of limited uh, sort of the perspective on that. So I'll leave that to you. I mean, I kind of enjoyed the fact that her wish coming true was kind of just the fact that she was just being more self-confident in a lot of ways. Obviously the stuff with her reflexes improving, that was definitely magical. But so yeah, but I'm just gonna shut up about it, because it's much better that you guys voice opinions on that rather than me. um
And again, I'll be the controversial one here. I think if they were, again, trying to pull that 80s aspect in, yeah, that was a thing. You had women who were not being recognized for their talent. She's a doctor. She is brilliant. She is head of all these departments at the Smithsonian. She was pretty much overlooked, ignored, um, and they kind of uh, played on it was within her all the time. It's just she just had to aim it, own it, and step into it. I thought it was funny that all she ended up doing was realizing that she was about to make the walk of shame. So she wakes up, takes off her shirt, her skirt, pulls down her sweater, just happens to be wearing, you know, tights, which is not actually 80s accurate.
Pantyhose was the main thing back then, yeah?
Yeah, but you really weren't wearing that. I mean, again, little historical aspect, and I'm telling on myself here, is that you did wear those cute sweaters that were short, that came mid thigh, just above the knee. You didn't wear the pantyhose because the whole thing was getting away from that. You didn't wear the leggings. You didn't wear whatever. Um, Really, in the 80s, you were a lot more covered up. If you want to see what it looked like, look at um Janet Jackson's video. Yeah, the leg warmers, but her in a bathing suit. I was like, why is she there with her high leg cut in the gym and not in a aerobics class? That one irritated me, but separate issues. But I understand the glow up there trying to give her confidence, and she just took her hair clips out. Okay, great. But I guess that didn't bother me as much as she was still her goofy, kind of quirky self, but all of a sudden, the guys in the room kinda looked at her because she had on a sweater and just a pair of leggings. Mm, I see where they were going with it, but it was a thing in the 80s. Women were not looked at as being equals. You saw women wearing more of those boxy suits.
Shoulder
Um,
pads, so
yeah,
many
shoulder
shoulder
pads for
pads. My
days.
mom still has these old suits from the 80s with the shoulder pads. It was all about appearing masculine at work so that you would be one of the
Be
guys.
respected. Yeah,
Yeah.
so if anything, it didn't kinda make sense because the Smithsonian is a very conservative spot. So, what they had her in kinda was contraindicated to, like, what Diana was wearing, and frankly, what Diana had on was not really 80s accurate. It was a little too modern, what she had on. I mean, girlfriends walking around with a dress that's showing all that was not 80s chic at the day. Now, the couple that were on the bridge over the yeah, there weren't, Jenna, you're right. I was surprised that they weren't gonna go in for 84. They should have gone all in on that. And so that's what I was saying. It wasn't really 100%. Now, Pedro Pascal and his seersucker um, striped suit, absolutely spot on.
I will
Um,
say, I think the whole thing with Diana, and you can kind of excuse that by the fact that she's someone who's always out of time because she's not necessarily a person of the 80s, but those other um, mistakes, I think you're probably right to call out. Normally, I'd be like, well, filmmakers make decisions, and and should we really be up in arms about the things that aren't completely accurate? But like, as we've established, the whole point of this was that it's set in 1984, so you should probably get those things accurate if that's the conceit you're going with.
yeah,
So
very much so. So, I mean, there were ways they could have brought Barbara into her power without crossing genres. And, I agree with Jenna. Diana wasn't 80s enough. That's why for me the titling the movie Wonder Woman 1984, if you're gonna go in the 1980s, go all the way in. In the 1980s, from fashion to music to style. I mean, they hit it with the cars and with the facades on the buildings, but they could have done a lot more, just to be more consistent with it.
I will say, I feel like, and maybe I should just shut my mouth, but I have I had
Jump
like
in. Come
I had a
on.
different read on. I very much responded to the fact that the main thing with Barbara was that she was a lot of it was in her confidence, and and I sympathized with her character right off the bat because you mentioned that she's kind of invisible. She feels invisible, and I like the fact that by sort of starting to believe in herself, she's more outgoing, and I do think that change in attitude does kind of subconsciously resonate with other people. So it doesn't necessarily seem out of the blue that people would then pay more attention to her. I think if you believe in yourself, you feel better about yourself, that kind of ends up reflecting with other people. And I really loved the sort of developing friendship between her and Diana in the beginning of the film. I just love the fact that you have this person who, you know, I like I said, I identify with. She's, she has trouble talking to people, and she's very shy around Diana, and but she's wanting to, to get to know her, and depending on how you read it, she, I took it as there may be a crush element there. And but I just like the fact that she was so nervous, and there's a common bond that forms very quickly between the two of them, and I like that. I like to think that moving beyond this film, that is able to be repaired, and maybe it's a good relationship between those two. So I really felt for her in this, and I think that's why I was kind of on board with her gaining that self-confidence, because I kind of, in a way, I kind of, I don't know. I don't want to say I know what she feels like, because obviously I don't, but that part of it resonated with me. So yeah.
I think it's also a little bit of a commentary on how shallow the guys around her are. Like,
Yeah.
she changes, like, it's like, I asked a guy out once and he rejected me, and then I started losing weight and I was about 40 pounds down, and all of a sudden he asked me out. Like, guys it can be like a change to your appearance can completely change their attraction to you. So it also kind of showed how the guys around her were kind of shallow jerks in a lot of ways. But I will say, she got this male attention and this approval, and in the end, that wasn't actually what she needed, right? In the end, she needed to have self-love, to love herself, and I think that was kind of where they were trying to go with her character. And as far as how successful that was, we can discuss, but I think that the attempt, what they were trying to do, was obvious. The execution may not have been the best.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, the picture that John just put up, that's more late 90s, like, club wear. That's not mid 80s.
Mm.
As one who spent quite a bit of time in the club in the mid 80s, so that's why I was, if you're going to do this, the research on the costuming and the clothing and the look and feel is there, so it was almost as if that I was looking for more of the Madonna look, the shredded tops where you cut the necks out of your sweater, where you're showing a shoulder, and you didn't really, if you're going to do that, I mean, go all the way there. So I'll get off the fashion for that moment. But I like the fact that you had these two intelligent women who were trying to solve a problem. And, Diana didn't talk down to Barbara. And Barbara was, I agree with Amy, had a little bit of a crush there of, hey, I wish I could be, or John, looking up to her. And I liked that. But I just think there were certain visual clues that they kind of took shortcuts on that would have helped to not keep snapping me out of, well, what are you trying to say? So I was more so focusing on the relationships that were going on. Like, I love the fact that poor Barbara was trying to best to fit in and thinking she should wear heels, and they had these little visual cues with the cheetah print on Diana's shoes, which I was like, really? Shoes? And that she was this sweet person to the homeless guy, that she brought him food, that you had jerks who would hit on you and think, I can just walk up to you and put my hands on you and it's okay. It's a thing. It did happen.
It
And it
still
was,
happens.
it does, but it was very normal back then. Um, you had folks that would just roll up on you, and if you didn't, weren't flattered by the fact that they were hitting on you in such obnoxious ways. I remember telling a guy in a club, your price of your admission did not include this. You don't have enough money. Go away. Um, and the guy getting offended, and I'm like, you'll live. Um, but I like the fact that that Diana was taking Barbara under her wing, but even when she was trying to solve a problem, she met Barbara where she was. Barbara, you're a gemologist, you're smart, you're intelligent. We need to solve this. And that Barbara was like, what do you need, girl? Got it. Let me look into this. Let me see what I can find. Let's work this problem together. And that played into her confidence. And I enjoyed that aspect of it. There were just some inconsistencies with the way they were staging this that just didn't work for me from that, again, that 84
And see,
theme.
this is the advantage of me not really remembering the 80s at all. So that stuff didn't stick out to me. But I agree that if you're going to set the film specifically in a certain year, you better get that right. So even though it didn't distract me, I get it. And like, I acknowledge that those are some things you think they would have done some better research on.
Could we move on to talking about the wishing stone and kind of what that was doing in the movie? Because that was kind of the main, thrust of the plot, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Which this was an element of the film that I really actually enjoyed, because I think it really brought to life these themes of, like, taking shortcuts and the sort of absolute greed, and that they really hit home about that sort of, especially America in the 80s and America today, honestly. Just and you can't miss who Max is kind of at least partially inspired by. And yeah, it's just, I like how it just progressively keeps getting worse. It like starts off with a couple of wishes, and then you can see how it can eventually lead to this excess of greed and the as the crumbling of a civilization and all that stuff. Yeah, I just really liked how, as a story, it played out, and I think it had a lot of wonderful commentary on on our society even today.
Well,
So
taking
yeah,
shortcuts, you
yeah,
know, there's got to be a way to lose weight without putting the work in, to get rich without working hard, which is pretty much what, you know, Pedro Pascal's character was doing. And the fact that he was losing time with his kid. But that was very much an 80s thing, where everybody was foisting off their responsibilities to other people while they had their head down, trying to get ahead, trying to work hard, trying to get somewhere, and that a lot of shortcuts were being taken, and it was hurting people.
Yeah, and
So
for Maxwell, right? That was his name,
yeah,
Maxwell Lord. Yeah, and for his character too, you could tell that he thought being a good father meant getting rich so that your kid,
has stuff,
would have everything they wanted,
stuff.
right? Exactly. It's a very materialistic view of fatherhood. And his kid, who was, by the way, I'm not usually into kids in movies. I'll be like, okay, you want us to feel something, whatever. But I actually really liked the kid in this movie. I was like, he's so cute. He's so sweet. He just wants to be with his dad.
and I want
And
to
his
say,
dad just wants to get rich.
and as long as we're talking about Max and his son, like, I thought this was an enormously successful part of the film. I actually thought that there was it really worked, that sort of establishing that emotional bond and showing that's what kind of, as misguided as Max is, and he just gets worse and worse as, as the movie progresses, thanks to, everything that sort of happens to him through his own doing. But it shows that at the root of it, again, as misguided as he is, he's doing it because he wants his son to be proud of him. And again, I'm mentioning Hans Zimmer, the theme that he wrote for Max was so wonderful because it's an emotional theme. It sort of makes you feel for this guy even when maybe you shouldn't. And you know, his bond with his son and all that stuff. Again, like, I just think this is the best thing Hans Zimmer has done in years, because over the past like decade, he's done very sort of electronic driven scores that are more about sort of not saying they're bad. There, a lot of his scores over the past few years have been great, but they're very much about sort of establishing like a vibe and a mood, and it's the type of sound you're hearing. This film had so many beautiful themes woven throughout, and it's very melodic, and and there's a lot of pure orchestral sound. It's absolutely breathtaking, and I think one of the biggest successes again is the theme that he wrote for Max, and his son, his relationship with his son. It's kind of the standout piece for me, as glorious as all the other stuff is. The sort of main Wonder Woman theme written for this film, which gets very big and sweeping and operatic, but there's something about that emotional theme that he writes for Max that is it both really ties you into him as a character, and it's so surprising because you wouldn't expect this from sort of your chief villain of the movie to get music that makes you kind of feel for you.
But didn't get he didn't start off as the villain, though.
Yeah.
What ended up happening is
villain, sort of, yeah.
he gets lured by the cat's paw, by the monkey's paw, because if you ever read that short story about the monkey's paw, it's a very insidious thing because it's about temptation to get everything that you ever wanted, but are you willing to pay the price? It's like, a reoccurring theme that you see in different um, uh, movies or TV shows that we've seen, with every time you make this choice, there is a price that must be paid. And people not understanding. I mean, Maxwell, did you look in a mirror and see that your eyes were bleeding out? I'm like, dude, you knew you were sick. And that didn't maybe give you a hint to stop? No, he got lured by the power and got sucked into it. Dark side, force, whatever, pick a trope. But I love that his music was anchored in Alistair, in the son, not in the father, because it's ultimately he had to connect to the son to bring him back. Now, Cheetah was harder because all she could see was her life before, and she felt better, not understanding, but you own that now. You don't need Diana to get you where you need to go. It's within you. So I agree that it's going to be interesting how they carry that forward. Here's my one quibble, gripe, grumpy spot. If he becomes the stone and he renounces, his wish, shouldn't he have been destroyed? Shouldn't all the damage that was done because he wished all that to be restored to health, shouldn't he have been destroyed or at least sick. I felt that there was not a price that he paid for that. There should have been a consequence for that.
No,
Well,
I
wasn't
mean,
it the stone that what was killing him? So then when
yeah,
he's no longer the stone, because he couldn't contain all of that power wasn't meant for one human to contain.
But there was at some point where he was saying, I take your health, I take your strength, I take this, I take that.
yeah, but if he
I think
renounces
there
his,
should have been a price to
yeah,
wield that. I think there should have been a loss for him.
I don't think that's what they were aiming for with that, though. I think the idea is you renounce, like, he was sick because he became the stone. If he renounces his wish to become the stone, then he
There's
should
there's there
should be
still should have
perfectly
been a
fine.
loss for that. Hell, arrest the man, something.
Well, I do think he's headed to prison. We don't see that in the film, but I very much assume that that's what awaits him.
That was my assumption as well.
Yeah.
He, if anything, even if everything was undone, he still took over this national broadcast. A high security facility that he basically, at least for breaking and entering, he's gonna get in jail for
And he
that.
was working on basically a Ponzi scheme before it all started anyway.
Yeah,
So
and he
it's
also,
like
and when we all know from from the Bernie Madoff thing that you can do whatever you want ripping off poor people, but rip off rich people and you're actually going to jail. So yeah, so he's definitely going to get into trouble for basically selling bonds. Basically having people buy into resources that were not actually there. It was a Ponzi scheme. So
He needs something off of his head.
No,
Punch him.
I don't think that's the message they're going for either, especially with I think it's a more forgiving tone overall that they're going with everybody sort of renouncing their wishes and and accepting that the world isn't perfect. I don't see that him getting like killed or something fits in with that. He's gonna have to pay the price for what he's done.
I think the price, Aaron
I
has a good question here. The cost seems, first of all, his health, and I think second of all, his alienation from his son, right?
Yeah,
He's even
that's the key thing.
He also nukes the whole world, and you have that scene where his son is, running around. He basically almost nuked his son, essentially. So I think that no longer. He did care for his son, and the power of the stone was starting to make him think, well, if I grant everyone's wishes and quote unquote make the world a better place, then it'll be better for my son, when actually people are selfish and their wishes are selfish, and it only made the world worse. And one of my favorite scenes, of course, because I speak Chinese, is when they went all over the world, and there was a girl in China, and she said, "Xi Wang You Ming, I hope I'm famous," and then all of a sudden everyone's like banging on the door. It's just like, right? People are not going to be like, I wish world hunger was over, right? Like these are all selfish wishes. And so he thought he was being selfless and wanting to make everyone quote unquote richer and happier, but then he is losing his son in the process. And really his son is the only one who loves him for him. Everyone else around him just kind of wants him, wants Maxwell Lord for what they can give him. And also in the chat, they were talking about Maxwell Lord in the comics. Wonder Woman does off him in the comics eventually. Mm-hmm. She has no choice. She has to kill him. So this movie also, I think, has a much more, first of all, it has a more optimistic view of humanity. Everyone like undoes their wishes. There was that one like butthole in Arizona or something that was
and see, and I have a feeling
that was the key. Every
single person.
And
there's no way. There's no way everyone.
Why? Because I can't see Cheetah doing it. She said she never would. So that's why for me it was like.
Let's not forget though that Patty Jenkins was very much inspired in at least she said as much for the first film, and I presume for this one as well, because it does feel very very much of that ilk. She was inspired by the original Superman film, which is like as hopeful as you can get about humanity. And
hi, sweetie. Hey. Oh, I know she can't hear me because you have your.
Carole, you're just trying to distract everybody from what I'm saying because nobody's going to listen to me when there's a
When
cutie
there's a
pie
dog
on
on
the
the,
screen.
or is it a he? I'm sorry, Carol. I don't
She-
mean to misgender your dog. Okay, it is a she. Oh, what a cutie. Does she have a little sweater on? I'm sorry, John.
She
I totally
does.
interrupted you. You know how I am about dogs on the screen.
Yep, she does.
Oh, hello, sweetie. So cute.
Whatever. How much you mad?
I will.
Okay.
I do want to say though that it's very easy from today's perspective to say that we can't accept this optimistic view of humanity that everybody would renounce their wish, but if your inspiration, if part of your inspiration is the Christopher Reeve Superman, like that movie trades in that stock completely of the fact that an optimistic view of humanity. And it goes back to, if we're go back to Star Trek, looking at that optimistic view of humanity, especially the original series. No, maybe it's not believable in, if you're taking a realistic perspective of our own actual society. But you know what, damn it, I say sometimes we need that in film and storytelling. We need to be given hope. And this story, even if I don't believe it would have been possible in the real world, the story nonetheless makes me believe within the confines of this story that everybody does renounce their wish, and that inspires me, regardless of whether I think that our society today would be willing to do that. So.
I think other than Barbara's wish, all of them happened after Lord was, and I think Diana's wish, all of them happened after he had become the stone. So I think him renouncing his original wish should have just automatically undid all of the wishes.
But they do also show people continuing to renounce their wishes, which so I think the point is, I'm just probably not helping people who are trying to explain this away, but
I know we're doing like mental gymnastics. I just think that if it all originally stemmed from his original wish to be the wishing stone, then he automatically undoes it with undoing his wish. I think that would be the easiest way to do this, but instead it got really convoluted.
I don't think it's convoluted. I think the film takes a hopeful perspective that everybody does renounce their wish. We can argue about whether you find that believable or not, but I think in the world and the tone that has been set up by Patty Jenkins for these films, that is something that I absolutely buy for the story. But that's up to the individual.
Good luck to go through life being hopeful, John. See what it gets you.
I didn't say
No.
I believe. I think I made it clear that I don't believe, especially in our sort of modern society, that would even be remotely possible. But I don't expect reality in my movies, especially.
Well, this is a question too. Did Cheetah still have her powers? It was unclear, and actually, I think Patty Jenkins said she wanted it to be unclear if Barbara renounced her wish, because she made it even before the wishing stone was absorbed into Maxwell.
Indeed, as did Diana. I'm not sure if she did. I think there was an aspect of her wish of being apex predator and all this other stuff that was included in with Maxwell that got undone. But being more like Diana, I don't know if that one got undone.
On my initial viewing, I assumed that she did, but then when I watched it the second time, I was like, it doesn't actually show her saying anything. So,
it was meant to be left up in the air.
I think the one that happened when they were on Marine One, when they were on the helicopter, that one was caught up in Maxwell. But before that, I want to be more like Diana. I think that one is still in play. I don't think she renounced.
Exactly, but the one where she said, I want to be different, like I want to be different from Diana.
An apex
and
predator.
Own, and then she turns into, Cheetah. That was after Maxwell had been the wishing stones. Oh, man.
And I'm sorry. I have another quibble. Of all the apex predators, a cheetah? It doesn't make sense.
It made sense because that's the character. So.
Well, in the comics, there are many different origin stories for her, but one of them is that she finds this tribe who worshipped the spirit of a cheetah like god, and that kind of, but they had to fit it in this specific framework. And I'm fine with retconning how people get their powers.
Okay,
Cheetah.
I just want to stop here because I can't believe it. We're already over an hour.
Oh my gosh!
Like it's crazy. And to be clear, like I had like my notes are very structured, like going throughout the film. But I love that we've just been sort of jumping all over the place, and we've been having such a wonderful conversation. So this is great. So just hold on for a moment because I want to do the mid roll. And just talk about what we have coming up next week. A slight change. We're probably not going to be joined by our fellow Knight of Keira, Jared, because he works in the medical field, and I think there's something about that being an important job right now.
Whatever. He should just be streaming every Saturday with his friends. It's also an important contribution to society, John.
So it may just be me and Amy, which is going to be fine because I'm really looking forward to hearing her thoughts on the film A Dangerous Method, because I think you're going to go to town on that one, Amy.
Boy, get your drinks, get some form of beverage ready, y'all, because there's going to be some patriarchy up in here. Absolutely. Yeah. Psychoanalysis was completely founded on the idea that women are hysterical and we need to fix them. So that's going to be fun.
Oh yeah.
Stop.
Would you guys stop it? Okay. Like it was funny for a while. Now it's just like really grating on my nerves. Jared does exist. He's a person. He's a damn fine person. Okay. Moving on. After that, we've got one hell of a month coming up, honestly.
Yes, we have 5 Saturdays this month, so you're gonna get 5 movies here in January on Jawoof. So we're very excited.
Yeah, so next week, A Dangerous Method, and then the week after that, we're doing Mean Girls, and our good friend Kate is going to be joining us on the stream. So that's going to be a bunch of fun.
Yes, Kate. Woo!
And then the week after that, we're going to be covering the first X-Men film, and we're going to be joined by Kelly, Jaded Redhead, and somebody else, Amy. Who else is going to join us?
Maybe like my best friend in the whole wide world since I was 10, Jenna, is going to come on and talk to us about it because I remember in middle school, she and we were dorks, and we admit it, we would hang out with our language arts teacher, Mr. Flores, at lunch and talk about X-Men. So we both are very big X-Men fans, and we talk about it a lot. So yeah, I'm very excited to have Kelly and Jenna on, and it's just going to be just a total geek fest about X-Men, and it's going to be great.
We're actually going to have to work hard to keep our focus primarily on the actual film we're discussing, because I have a feeling that we're just going to want to talk about everything X-Men.
Yeah, it's a huge franchise, so yeah. It's gonna be really fun. So yeah, we're gonna do X-Men, and then after that is Pan's Labyrinth. Yeah, John?
Yep, and we're gonna be joined by my brother Stephen Stark, as well as Cecilia from Geeksterelia, which I'm so excited to have her back. We had her for Fellowship of the Ring, and she's gonna be coming back for Pan's Labyrinth, which is also one of my very favorite films of all time.
Yes, and on Here Be Dragons, she's been talking some Mandalorian with John, Nessie, and Steven, so please check that out if you haven't. Cecilia is an amazing guest, and I can't wait to be live with her for the first time. I'm very excited.
Yeah. So
other than Fellowship of the Ring, sorry, I have been live with her technically.
Yeah. Okay, Amy. So like, what's going on with you? Because
I'm doing nothing, John. I have nothing going on. So this month I'm gonna have Micah on the channel.
Lies.
I sit on a throne of lies. This month I'm gonna have Micah on the channel for some buddy banter. He's still thinking about his topic, so I'll be excited to see what he comes up with. But we're gonna talk about whatever he wants to talk about. And yeah, I am working on an essay looking at Hua Mulan and comparing her to brave Danny Flint from A Song of Ice and Fire and Sorella / Alaris. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm also going to be doing a black and white yin and yang symbology in A Song of Ice and Fire. And then I have some His Dark Material stuff coming out as well. And I'm going to crack into The Witcher, Avatar: The Last Airbender, and The Poppy War, which, have you heard the gospel of the Poppy War? You need to read it. Thank you. This has been my plug. And yes, as Leaf was saying in the chat, please check out Sanri's Threadless shop. She has some amazing A Song of Ice and Fire merch.
But Amy, are you guesting on any streams tomorrow?
Gee, I'm so glad you asked that, John. I am. I'm going to be on Here Be Dragons tomorrow, Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern, with this guy over here, John, and we're going to have me call on, and we're going to talk about Yennefer from The Witcher. We're going to focus on the show since not everyone's read the books, and we're going to have a great time talking about my favorite character. John had sent me like 4 or 5 options for what we could talk about, and I was like, Yennefer. He gave me that option. I was like, don't even send me a list. We're talking about Yennefer. So yeah, we're going to talk about that. And I'm really excited. This will be my first time talking about The Witcher live. So I'm really excited about that. Usually it's just been my thoughts in my own head or in live chats with something else.
Steven is out of town and Nessie has to work. So they have, for some bizarre reason, decided to give me the car keys. So everybody will just have to see how that goes. So do you have anything else, Amy?
Not that I'm aware of. Bleep the Patriarchy. The second episode has been rescheduled to February 10th. I know Wheezy in the chat, my girl, is not on Twitter, so she did not see that, but it has been rescheduled. So we're really sorry about that. Things happen, but we're going to be talking about the binary and why it's bullcrap. So that'll be fun. So that'll be in February over on Nessie's channel, The Unspun Yarn.
Excellent. Carole, tell the good folks what you're up to and where they can find you.
Let's see. Currently being tortured by a demon dog. She's like standing behind me trying to chew on my chair to get me to come play with her. I'm like, could you not? Actually, I've been pretty quiet, taking a little time, more so a lot of stuff at work, but I'm hopefully we'll get back into things once things calm down. Kind of just enjoying the little piece of quiet before the to quote Theoden, and so it begins. 2021, and so it begins. So who knows? Stay tuned. Maybe something else will be coming up.
Yeah, it's like we're not rocking the boat yet. We've had like a day or two of calm, and we're just waiting for 2021 to go off the rails. But we'll see. Hopefully not. But yeah, so
what are you up to?
Just doing these and trying to squeeze in time, reading and watching some stuff that's not stream related. And then finding time to also do work. I'm headed back to work this week, so that'll be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I will say I was reading a couple of really good books that were recommended over the break, which was nice. And streaming Bridgerton, which was really, really good. But I have to pull this book to see if you've ever done this. And here comes the dog. One sec.
I'm going to throw out a message to my wonderful peeps in the Here Be Dryden Slack. Stop seducing me for coming on to those Zoom chats because I need time. I need time for other stuff. Nice.
This is a really, really nice book, but it's like a series. So it's like 3 series of books in this one big one. And I've been going through this and it is amazing. So yes, it's almost 1,200 pages, but I'm about a third of the way through.
Excellent. Yeah. I started a lot of books in 2020 and I finished none of them. So I'm hoping to change that this year. I was just saying, like, the people in the Here Be Dryden Slack have to keep enticing me on to the Zoom chats because it's devoured all my reading time. So, yeah.
Yeah, I was supposed to take 2 weeks off at Christmas time. Yeah, that didn't happen. So I've just tried to, in the little periods of quiet, been trying to sneak this in and dealing with the vocal dog. Could you stop?
Um, so Amy has left us apparently. So hopefully she'll be back soon. I do want to. I feel like we've actually. I was about to say let's move on to the stuff that maybe we fully enjoyed for this film, but I feel like we should probably still tackle some of the criticism level that the film for its depictions of race, because that has been a thing online. The stuff that takes place like over in the Middle East and stuff. I wonder, did you have issues with that while you were watching the film?
I did. I must say it was very Carol Co. You know, every movie in the 80s was some sort of mustache twirling, burqa wearing, robe wearing. Could we not be more tropey? Could we not go there? And they just went all in. Um, I was disappointed that they went in in this direction. I found it funny that the US president was pretty much reduced to a puppet. Yes, whatever he said, just push whatever buttons, which was kind of interesting because that was the thought behind Reagan. He was an actor, and they thought there was a whole cabal of people behind him just saying, read the script, we're going to run the world behind you. But yeah, I found there were quite a few things about this that they could have, why go that direction? It was too easy to me.
Hey, Steven.
We love you, Steven. Um,
Good to see you, man.
yeah, I mean, those of you that follow my channel know that one of the things I study in school is Orientalism, and this very much had a lot of Orientalist aspects to it. Of the Westerner goes to an oil-rich kind of Middle Eastern country, and yeah, I didn't really appreciate it. I think that actually the movie, other than the action scene that they had, which was in itself problematic because you had guys kind of their head wrapped and they have these big guns, like it really kind of evoked the kind of view of Americans, the stereotypical view of terrorists, this kind of thing. So I really didn't appreciate that. I think that the whole movie would have been much better without this whole
Yep.
storyline at all.
Yep.
My advice always to people that are wanting to write about Middle Eastern or Eastern cultures or North African cultures is always talk to people that are from there. And if you still are not feeling right, don't do it. Leave it, because there are plenty of movie makers, writers from those areas that can produce a good work, and you just don't need to be a part of that. I really do think that unless you can do it right, don't do it at all when it comes to representing Middle Eastern, Eastern, and North African cultures.
I just felt like with all of the direction and the rich material that was there to choose from, that there was some really interesting shortcuts and laziness expressed. And it was very disappointing on so many levels because we work so hard to undo some of that. Why do you want to stir this up this way? One. The next aspect of it was they oversimplified some of the conflicts that are going in this region. No, it isn't this or that. There is a whole history behind the conflicts in this region, and you've distilled it down to something that's very Hollywood and not correct. So I was very disappointed with that. That if you have a platform to and you choose to go in this direction, could you be accurate?
Yeah, and there was also the commentary that they had, of course, where whenever he made the leader made his wish, that created the wall, which then made it so that poor people couldn't get water. It was very kind of they talk about this a lot with with China, saying that the Communist Party or the rich people in China do things that then hurt the poor, and that's bad, but we're good. It's kind of a them bad us good trope that I've never really been fond of, because the American capitalists do a lot to hurt the poor. So I didn't care for it.
Well, I mean, seriously, if you go back and look at the movie industry in the 80s, there was a company called Carol Co. And their job was
No relation
Rambo
to you, of
comes
course,
to
right?
mind. I mean, all they did was is they made money on these stereotypical tropes of, Middle Eastern Africa bad, America good. And we must go in and blow your shit up because you're bad. I mean, everything. And to go in this direction in this day and age, Patty Jenkins didn't have to go there. You know what I mean? Just keep it to Maxwell being extra crazy, trying to achieve, they would have been fine with, okay, there is this multi-reach communications array, and it will allow me to touch people and get them to make wishes. All the rest of that stuff could have been left out. And people wishing for silly, venal, crazy, not important things, feeding his wishstone monkey's paw thing, we would have been fine. But some of that other stuff that was in there, it's like, I lost some respect for her. I had a lot of respect for her in the first movie. I lost some respect because it was supremely lazy. You didn't have to go in this direction. We're already living this right now. Why would you want to reemphasize that? It just kind of, I was very disappointed.
Yeah, no, like we said with the problematic aspect of Steve inhabiting someone else's body, we were talking about how it can be altered. This whole storyline in Egypt could not have been altered. It should have just been scrapped completely.
Yeah, I mean, I could probably go on about what I think the intentions were about sort of opening the scope to really hit home, that, taking a wider view of the world. But at the end of the day, none of that, it could have been excised. It didn't need to be there. And with the wealth of story material that you could have done, the different ways you should show it, just there's no reason to do it. It's so yeah,
And
it
they
just
showed
is
the
what it
worldwide
is.
scope when they showed people all over the world. Like I mentioned earlier, the scene with the Chinese girl who wished that she were famous. They had
Yeah.
obviously something going on. I wasn't exactly sure where it was. It seemed like it was in England, where the English lady was like, "Go back to your country, Irish guy," and then he was like, "I wish you were dead," and then she's dead. This kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So they obviously were showing conflict in different places all over the world. So it just really was the worst part of the movie. The whole part in Egypt was just, and then Diana saving the kids. They were just playing in the street, who like apparently didn't at all notice these insane, cars barreling toward them. And then she speaks to them in Arabic not to, play in the street. A little bit white savior going on, and I'm really not a fan.
Well, I mean, you'd get that, you know, if she was anywhere in the world,
She will
not,
save children
yeah.
before anything.
I think you and I actually talked a little bit about this, Amy. Like, the fact that, if you showed anywhere outside of the U.S. with her saving people, it was going to go into sort of white savior territory.
Yeah, so I just don't understand why Patty Jenkins set herself up for that, is what I'm saying then, I mean, even though she's obviously a demigod, so she also has this kind of struggle with the gods as well. She's not quite Captain America, but she is usually an American hero. So just kind of keep her in America.
I do want to make a point of this. I've seen some people say that she saves the children with the missile. What she actually does is that she uses the lasso to basically throw the missile in another direction, and then she takes the lasso again, attaches it to, I think it's a flagpole, and then she saves the children. I do feel like that's an important distinction. I just want to point that out. Not to say that, the entire sequence should be excused, because as we've said over and over, there were a million different ways they could have gone in this movie, and this whole sequence could have just not been done. But that, on that little minor point, I have an issue with people saying that. But yeah, that's the only thing I'll argue. Aaron, I don't think it's hair splitting. But yeah, I agree completely that the sequence wasn't needed, and they could have just gone in a different direction.
What would have been preferable for me is we could have traded all of that for Cheetah's development. You know what I mean? For her wrestling with, I was this and now I'm that. They were starting to go there when she ran into drunk guy, because Diana saved her the first time. She saved herself. And then when the homeless guy was like, "What are you doing?" And then she was like, "Mind your business." There could have been more wrestling there, where she's like, "What am I doing? What am I saying? I'm not this way." And then more of her conflict and her inner dialogue of what was causing her to. Because for me, I didn't see how she got from Barbara to a Catwoman. There was, I mean, I know where it goes in the comics, but it just didn't
It could have been
pull
more
all that
gradual.
See,
together.
I don't know how much I agree with that. I got the impression that the more powerful she got, the more she was losing her humanity, and I thought that was.
And I agree with that, but there was no wrestling with it. Even Diana, when she made the wish about Steve, it was almost, man, I know what my wish would be, not thinking it would happen. And then with Barbara not knowing this could happen, it starts happening. There didn't seem to be any inner dialogue going on. I would have just liked to see a little more of that inner dialogue.
I think she gets so.
I agree,
excited.
Laura. Yeah, I agree. I think that's what I'm
gets,
struggling with.
I think she gets so excited by by the change that she sees, going on, her enhanced abilities, and and her, quite frankly, her popularity, that I think she's not letting herself think of the bad.
And that's what I'm talking about, as far as, I think it was a missed opportunity. I think it was a missed opportunity to show more of that struggle, and then her going, "You know what? I'm okay with this. I'm going to do a little further down and slide off the edge." Again, the being tempted by the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to this. This leads to a makeover. I mean, something to just show that character development. And I agree. I forget who just typed it. Max, they spent more time building Max's slide off.
Well,
Aaron, yes.
That I do agree with.
They could have done a little duality with Barbara as well.
And I think this comes down to the fact that it's always rather difficult to balance when you have two, quote unquote villains in a story, which, begs the question, why do filmmakers do that other than to presumably up the ante? It still worked for me, but I get where you're coming from with that. Especially if you're cutting out other sequences that definitely didn't need to be in there. you
Yeah.
could have spent more time there.
More time.
Yeah, and
But
I
that
think
said,
that
her performance still for me was really great, and so I still think that it worked for me, but definitely, there's room for improvement.
but I think if we would have seen more of her development, that it would have been a more of an emotional impact when she went full cheetah. And instead it was a little choppy because we see her like when they fight in the White House and everything, and she's kind of just a strong, she's kind of dressing a little punk, before punk because it's more 90s, although 80s was also there. But she kind of all of a sudden then she says, oh, I don't want to be like her. I want to be different. I feel like if we have gotten just 2 or 3 more scenes in between that where we show her going, this isn't working for me, I want to be my own person, then the switch to cheetah would have made more sense. But
And the connecting tissue was when they discovered, with the guy in Georgetown at the record store or wherever it was. Oh, this monkey's paw will take everything down. It destroyed the Mayans, because that was the biggest mystery, is what happened to the Mayans. When they were there, then they were gone, and no one knew why. So here is this connective tissue that says, if you keep going down this path, the ultimate price that you're going to pay is you're going to lose everything. So Barbara's there and is hearing the whole dialogue of, oh, wait a minute, to save, society, humanity, whatever, we have to renounce this, or we're going to lose everything. And she's sitting there like, but wait, I finally achieved something that I'm happy with. I'm willing to pay the price to keep this. And that whole conflict and push and pull was being established. And then it just got dropped. To me, I would have liked to see a little more of that, a little more development to that, because I don't think they fully uh, pulled it all the way over. So when she becomes Cheetah, it's like, but why that? I don't get that. You get it in the comics. I didn't get it in the movie. They just think they just took too many shortcuts.
yeah, and like we were saying, they spent so much time on this kind of Egyptian field trip that really in the end didn't have that much impact on the
Yeah.
story. Like it did show how the world was kind of going into chaos because of Maxwell's obsession with, oil reserves. But other than that, Cheetah was should have just been more central in general, and I'm hoping that she will come back as a more um permanent antagonist. And I just don't think that's the the movie ended it so that it seems like she wouldn't be, and that is a really big loss for the franchise, because Cheetah is the main villain other than the gods, dealing with god shit, right? Cheetah is the main antagonist for Wonder Woman. And
So
so, and I also found her a
Well,
little
see,
depowered as well.
and I think for me that also comes what comes into play with that. I hear that a lot, that Cheetah needed to be a bigger deal because of what she is in the comics, and coming from my perspective, someone who I'm not familiar at all with the comics, so perhaps that was why I was a bit more satisfied with her prominence in the story. But
so
yeah,
so
I don't know.
so let's look at it in terms of pulling Hans Zimmer back in. And I agree, Micah. Kristen Wiig killed
She was
it.
great.
She was
Something
really
about
good.
comedians in dramatic roles that it
Right?
really,
It's
really
so
works, where they can
great.
just tap into reserves, because stand up is hard.
Mm.
Um, but if you look at Dark Knight, because you have Heath Ledger killing it as the Joker, going in a slightly different direction for the Joker, because the origin story is a little different. Hans Zimmer's portraying of that conflict, and then Alfred saying, there are some people that have no problem being nuts. They just want to burn down the world. And I think Patty could have gone almost in a Chris Nolan-esque direction to really flesh out Barbara just going off the edge and becoming full cheetah.
That's
Because if you look at
interesting.
her life up to that point, and then her getting that taste, and then Micah mentioned, her envy, her I want more, but again, taking shortcuts, which then would have tied into the beginning themes of Diana cheated, and that's why she couldn't be allowed to win. Diana tried to tell that to Barbara at some point, but it lost its impact. It didn't land with the same resonance
But it's funny
because it just
because
didn't get enough time with it.
if we're comparing to the Dark Knight, though, it's funny because I actually see
Funny that you're wearing.
the character dynamic differently. Where I feel like Max fulfills the sort of Joker role, whereas Cheetah is more of the Two-Face. Prominence in the story where the villain part sort of comes out at the end, and yeah. So I don't know.
See, and I'm the opposite. I think Cheetah is Joker, and I think Maxwell is Two-Face. In just my perspective, only because here you have this person who really wasn't trying to be a villain, because Harvey Dent really wasn't trying to be a villain, but because he lost so much, he lost his humanity, and he
Mm.
becomes a villain. So I see Maxwell more Harvey Dentish, but with the Joker, we don't know what the trigger was, but we know that his thing is he's just about, I want to be seen. I
Yeah,
want to be acknowledged.
I
I
think as
want
far
to
as
test this. And I see Barbara in that light.
I
Just
think
me.
as far as like sort of digging into the characters, I think you're right. I think that those are the parallels, but I'm speaking more of it in terms of like the storytelling and the sort of placement of the villains. I think that um, I think that Pedro Pascal is given sort of the Heath Ledger treatment of going all out with this, you know, character, and Barbara is the person who we see sort of degrading over the course of the film into and then assuming that traditional cheetah villain persona near the end, just as in Dark Knight Harvey becomes Two-Face near the end. And I remember hearing similar complaints where people wanted more out of Two-Face in there. Like he's, I heard people say he's Harvey for the whole movie, and then he's just, Two-Face for a little bit, and they wanted more from that. And I hear a lot of the similar things here with regards to Cheetah. So that's kind of the dynamic I'm hinting at there. Micah says he wanted sort of their prominence, in the story to be kind of reversed. I was endlessly like entertained by Pedro throughout this film. So like I loved every little bit that we got from him. I think DC of today isn't good with two villains. Go back to what Tim Burton did with Batman Returns, and I would say that there is evidence of a DC movie doing two villains really, really good.
And that's talking about movies. As far as the shows, we have The Flash, Supergirl, Arrow. Those do much better with multiple villains, but they have an episodic format, and they really are able to develop their villains more. And of course, we have a movie, which is shorter. But like Carole said, if we just took out the whole Egyptian thing, then we could have gotten way more Cheetah. We could have gotten more Barbara kind of being halfway rather than just 0 to 100 real quick. And I think that's really important because, like I said earlier, otherwise we're not as invested in the villains, and they're more, pardon the expression, comic booky, in that they're less relatable. But there are some villains like Magneto and the X-Men where if you give them enough development, people can really feel for them and understand their motivations and why they're doing what they're doing. Whereas in this, Cheetah, we could have gotten a lot more of her frustration with her own life. We really only get her quote unquote awkward phase for like
four
3 or 4
seconds.
scenes. Yeah, just not
But
much
I
at
thought it
all.
was really well conveyed, and maybe it's because I'm getting a little personal here. Maybe it's because I kind of relate to that. I think somebody mentioned earlier in the chat that her awkwardness was
Agreed, AJ.
portrayed, but not her. But her kindness wasn't enough. But I guess I kind of identified certain traits with her, sort of that sort of awkward. Um, inability to relate to people, and I sort of saw her goodness through the way that she spoke to people, and and just the way that she acted. um I will say, I'm not saying there wasn't room for improvement, because there absolutely was, but I will say that for me, the villains, quote unquote villains, because I don't think they're as simple as
Antagonists.
antagonists. Yeah, thank you, Amy. I think the antagonists of this film were so much better to me than what we got in the first Wonder Woman. I actually thought that those were cardboard cutouts in that film, and I really liked feeling for these characters in this film. I know you guys say you wish you had felt more for Barbara, but I actually did feel for her, and I really liked the dimension they went for with Max as well. Um,
I did feel
it,
for her. I wanted more, right? When
Yeah.
you're interested in a character like that, you want more from them. And also maybe after we're done with this part of the discussion, I'd like to talk about Asteria too and what her character is doing as well. But
yeah, I actually do want to, because we're getting close to the end, and I do want to keep this close to 2 hours
that doesn't sound like it, John.
after a run of much longer streams. Let's try and keep this down somewhat. I want to take this time just to, because we've been critical about a lot of areas, and rightfully so, because I think those things needed to be talked about. But what did you guys just really enjoy about this film? Some parts for me, I really responded. There were a lot of bits, but I love the whole section where Diana is sort of showing Steve around, you know,
Died
around the 80s, and like,
laughing.
because he's the fish out of water this time, and it's just so much fun to watch everything from like his, trying on the clothes, to his reactions to stuff where he's just like, all wide-eyed. So I really thought that was a lot of fun.
Okay, the Pop Tarts reference. I'm sorry, died laughing. Is he sitting here eating Pop Tarts? But then from the um, germaphobe side of me, please don't kiss people with food in your mouth. Yes, love that. Well, shit, Diana. It's like all these things you're telling me. This is the one thing you decide to leave out. Um, I loved him falling in love um, with a fanny pack, which of course is back in.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
I
Yes.
He's
love
not wearing it there, but or is that there? Yeah, he's got one there.
Yeah, he's got it
Okay.
on. He's gonna turn it around, and that's the American. It's just they talked about how Chris Pine and Patty Jenkins and the wardrobe designer just sat there and were in tears as they were doing the tests for that, and Chris Pine was just riffing on just his looks and this whole mess. And oh my god, because I remember Miami. What is it? Miami Vice and the whole MC Hammer and MTV and that whole look and him freaking out over breakdancers. Um,
Yeah, and thinking he's gonna get hit by them, which yeah, that's great.
it's a trash can. Um,
Oh yeah, the art. And
they
he's looking at it and she goes, no, that's just a trash can.
should have taken it to the Mapplethorpe exhibit at, you know, um, the Smithsonian, because oh my god, I hated those exhibits. But then again, I'm not a fan of modern art. You can come at me all you want. I go to a modern art museum and I just sit there and go,
We actually, when I was over at Aaron's, there was a Simpsons episode that was on that was like, oh, what's this? Pomo. Oh, it's postmodern. They were looking at it and they're like, oh, just weird for being the sake of weird. Oh, okay. For the sake of being weird. That's kind of like modern art. Yeah.
I did love this part as well. Okay, I don't actually know. It was just a coffee cup and I lost it.
I will.
Yeah. Yeah. When she was trying to figure out the invisibility part. Yeah. I think the shout out to the invisible jet was my second favorite aspect of the story. My first favorite, and the reason I brought up Asteria, was this her telling about this this hero of her people who protected them and, you know, basically held off all of these people at once with her, you know, how all of the Amazonians had sacrificed their armor to make her this just amazing costume with the wings.
And I don't have a picture of Asteria.
How dare you?
But I do have the armor on Diana.
Good.
And
yes.
Oh my!
I mean, it was amazing, and I think that this part, I feel like that she could have done a little bit more with the armor, but otherwise, I liked the integration, the callback to her heritage, and the callback to Diana does a lot of defensive fighting in this movie. It's very different from Justice League, where she has the sword and she's stabbing, you know, minions and such, with the crazy demon flying things in Justice League. Spoiler, I guess, if you haven't seen it, whatever. But Diana is much more defensive in this movie. It's about, right, you see Steve pick up the sword and she goes, put it down, you know, like they don't know what they're doing. You know, even when she's fighting guys in Egypt with these huge guns, she's still like kind of just tossing them, you know, but not actually legitimately hurting them. And so to have then this very obviously defensive armor that was used in a defensive manner, you know, centuries ago, I think was, like I said, I love the setup and then the payoff for these kinds of themes, and this idea of sacrificing yourself for the betterment of people through defense is kind of what Diana was doing in the armor, and I really liked that.
I absolutely adored Chris Pine and Gal Gadot. Their chemistry, their humor, their timing. It was very sweet looking at Diana have that hope once she realized who he was, because again, he looked like the guy, but then once she accepted what was happening, she saw him. But then after that, the humor, the timing, the funny references, the callbacks, watching him just be confused
Oh my God.
on the escalator.
I was going to use a bike, but I couldn't figure out how it worked.
Oh my God. It was just all so sweet and lovely, and just, you know, I agree, Alicia, because she said she was looking for Asteria and couldn't find her, just found the armor. And I wonder what was the story behind that. Not for this. I'm just going to live, do my thing.
And every time they're like, there was this epic character and we never found a body. You're like, still alive, still alive. Like that is a classic trope of, you know, if you don't see the body in any fantasy
but I never
or anything, like they can still be alive.
But I never dreamed it was going to be Linda Carter.
No,
when that
totally
reveal happened, I was like, that's cool.
Totally floored me. And you know, it was an after
she said the exact
scene.
same thing that Diana said. I've been doing this a minute.
I've been doing this, yeah. And it's just a simple, you know, wait and trying to basically be like, I'm not really super, even though they are, you know, kind of explain it away for the plebes, the humans. But actually, it's not an after credit scene. It actually happens a little bit sooner than halfway through the credits. So when I was watching it with Jenna, she actually fast forwarded past it, and so I turned my mute off the Zoom, and I was like, oh my God, Linda Carter, and Jenna was like, wait, I haven't seen it yet. So you gotta let the credits go, because it's not after the credits, it's kind of in the middle. But I really appreciated that. That was really awesome. And
the music in the end credits, setting that up was
okay. Like
absolutely
we've
stunning.
already been talking about the music, but like seriously, like this is one of my favorite soundtrack albums that I've bought in a really long time. The music is just gorgeous. Like I don't care what your feelings were about the movie overall. Like if you love film music at all, buy the album. because there's like not a single thing wrong with the music. It's
It's perfection.
glorious. And yeah, it's like, I'm going to say right now, like, I'm kind of leaving the awards behind anyway, but I'm still going to riot if it's not nominated for an Oscar.
I'm gonna
Leaving
tell
the
you
awards,
it's
but you'll still
not.
pay attention, John. We
It's
know
not
you
gonna
will.
get nominated, or it's not gonna win. It'll get nominated, but it won't win. But it is some of the more fun music that Hans Zimmer has done in a while, because
Yeah.
of the way that he wove the
Yeah.
original theme into the new theme, and it's in the same meter.
Yeah.
It's in the exact same meter because you can hear it calling back to it, but going forward, which is what I love. It didn't go back, it goes forward, which is the theme of the movie. You have to keep moving forward, always forward. A little Luke Cage reference. I know it's Marvel, but same. Always forward. And those who don't embrace the forward, I mean, respect the past, but don't get stuck there.
Yeah.
And listening to that music, it was going forward, and it really took it in a direction that was absolutely lovely. It was just absolutely captivating. I mean, well, I waxed rhapsodic about it in the beginning of this stream, but I mean, just from a musician standpoint, from a composer standpoint, it just nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. And again, mini quibble, I think Patty Jenkins should have rose to the music
Uh,
all the way through the film.
and speaking of, talking some more about the music, there's, a, a little stretch in the movie where, you know, where she does say goodbye to Steve. And it's, oh my God, like, especially the second time watching it, that really tugged at my heartstrings. And the way that she just has to turn away from him, and the music takes over. And then, it launches into her, using the lasso to go up in the air. But then, it calls back to Steve talking about flying. And
Flying.
when she's able to do that, and the way the music plays, over that sequence, like, it's so beautiful. And this is why, like, saying again, I am not going to be, the sort of stereotypical John who, stubbornly says, that, a movie he loves is, without fault. I think a lot of people think that I do that. This movie does have issues. I have problems with certain things in it, but it is at the same time, it's such a gorgeous, emotional, lush film. And so I walked away from it really loving it. And I'm sure I owe a lot of that to Hans Zimmer, because he brought this film up to another level with his music. But I do want to say that I think this is a film that is beautiful. It's emotional. It does have things to say, even if they sometimes get lost in some of the missteps. Um, and I think that's good for a comic book film, especially, to have things that the filmmaker is wishing to impart on the audience. I think Patty Jenkins just needs to take a look at where she went wrong in this film, and hopefully learn from those mistakes, and hopefully we can have a Wonder Woman 3 that I think combines the strengths of both of the first two, and maybe not the weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, you had truth and not taking shortcuts, right? But you also had this idea of sacrifice, right, with Asteria's storyline, with her having to give up Steve again. So I think that if we we have a whiteboard, right, and we write these themes, they were identifiable, but they were not necessarily as consistent as maybe they could have been. So I think Patty going forward, of course she watches the channel, she's a fan, but she should really look at what she did right and enhance that, and then take kind of the criticisms and the suggestions from fans to realize, this is a really important, like, I mean, look at me, like, I'm a huge Wonder Woman fan. Like, this and X-Men, The Flash, and Supergirl, I will always watch whatever you put in front of my face. But I'm also, because I am a big fan, going to kind of have gripes with it when, it is not as as streamlined as it could have been. But like you were saying, John, and I have to agree, the emotion of this movie was very well done. And I think that if these other kinks would have been worked out, it would have been like an 8 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. But because it was so choppy, I would give it a 7, maybe a 7.5 if I was being generous. But literally, if they just would have taken out the Egypt scene, it would have been a solid 7.5. So, or not, if not an 8. But it felt really schizophrenic at some points. And I think that if she would have stuck to those, the emotion and to those very important themes of truth and of sacrifice and of, and I mean, it's called Lasso of Truth. She literally has it right in front of her, then this would have been a much better movie. And it's always hard with sequels because people love the first one. And whenever, you make I just watched Frozen 2 a couple days ago. That's one of the few sequels that I like as much, if not more, than the original. It's very rare for a sequel to be as good as the first. And so I get that there's those usual kind of sequel awkwardness, but I'm really hoping the third movie will kind of improve on some of these issues.
Well, the sophomore effort when you're doing part 2 of anything is going to be your challenge. Because typically, if the first one is really well done, the second movie, can suffer. There, of course, are some very obvious exceptions to this. Lord of the Rings being one with the Two Towers was beautifully done.
Which, by the way, if you
Empire Strikes Back is bar none one of the best movies on the planet. Aliens, excellent flick. I mean, so there are exceptions, but the thing is, the sophomore movie, the second, after you've had such a good, and I'm disconnecting Justice League from this, just Wonder Woman and then this one. Just let's leave Justice League.
Again, what's Justice League? I'm not familiar.
So if we leave that one out for a moment, Wonder Woman was an amazingly beautiful movie. I enjoyed it. I loved it. I thought it was very strong. This one, I think, fell into the sophomore movie trap of trying to do too many things. The music was beautiful. I think everybody kind of get the fact that I love that. But I just feel that, and Amy, you're better than I am because I give it a 6. It was good. It was enjoyable. It was fun. But there were things that just were snarky enough that pulled it down for me. I think there's an opportunity here for her third movie when she does it, that Patty can really kill it if she goes back to the energy that she got from the first. On that same token, the purpose of movies is supposed to be escapism, suspend your beliefs, help you to, transcend the day-to-day, the normal. I think this one missed that mark, but all in all was a great attempt. I think it was pretty good, but there were so many things that that level of effort that was in the first movie just didn't make it in the second movie for me.
It's really interesting, sort of the different views we have on stuff, because I would say that I enjoyed the first Wonder Woman. I don't think I was quite as in love with it as a lot of people were. I think that I think that it's a particularly good film. I think it kind of, the ending is weak. I didn't really vibe with the whole thing with Ares and all that, particularly the way he's depicted, and the action climax felt very Zack Snyder-ish, which anybody who knows me knows I'm not a fan of his.
John, this is my first time ever hearing of that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna fight because I love Zack.
Oh,
yeah. Sorry, I really don't.
First ever fight on Joe Live. You see it now, people.
Yeah, first ever
Zack.
fight. I and the thing is, like I said before, I do think that this film had much better antagonists. It was a lot of fun. I do think that the, you know, as I just said, I do think the third act of this film works better. And I was more emotionally invested. But I think there were a lot more problems too than with the first one. So it's this weird mixture where I think my sort of internal gut emotional reaction is that I enjoyed this one more, but I recognize the issues with it. I think the only real issue the first Wonder Woman has is in sort of the execution of the end, but it's not problematic. It's just, it's not my sort of preference for, I don't like the aesthetics of it. To that movie's credit, at least that ending action climax only lasts for a few minutes, whereas I think, again, I'm going to crap on Zack Snyder. If he had directed, it would have gone on for like an hour. Um, but so I do give credit to that. I do think that on a pure enjoyment level, I think I enjoyed this one more, just with that asterisk of it has some problems, and I do hope they're addressed for the next one, because I think that if you combine the good qualities of both films, I think you've got something extremely special, and I'd look forward to getting that with the third one. So.
I really liked the first one.
Yeah.
I agree with you, though. The last action sequence was a bit much. But I think Wonder Woman works really well in that World War kind of setting too. So
Yeah,
to
I
take
like
her
the
out of
setting better.
that, I think
Yeah.
is difficult, because the original comics, this 1970s show, everything is very World War. So because of that, it's very comfortable for fans to be watching her in that setting. So they were taking a chance here by putting it in the 1980s. And I'm always for taking a chance, and I don't think you should be punished for that. But like we said, especially in the beginning when Carole was outlining the problems with it not quite feeling 80s, is that, when you specifically say this is this time period and you don't lean in, you don't go all in, then it felt like in the beginning it seemed really committed. Like when the mall scene,
Yeah.
you saw the old J.C. Penney, which unfortunately now I bought as much J.C. Penney stuff as I could. Because
And
they
it
just shut
felt
down, and I
that,
was
that
really sad, and that was my favorite place to shop. So it made me a little nostalgic, because J.C. Penney unfortunately shut down this past year. So I think that it started to lag as far as commitment to the bit, basically,
yeah,
throughout
I
the
do
movie.
think that opening sequence though was really fun in how much
Very
it
fun.
leaned into that 80s vibe.
Yeah.
So
And I was ready for it to do more of that. Like, I love the shot of the married couple. Number one, why are you holding up a woman over a very low bridge? Because that's exactly the height of that railing. And then she goes over onto the C&O towpath. And I remember laughing because that's what 80s wedding look like, you know, because my sister got married in the 80s, and I remember all of her friends, because there's like a 7-year gap between my sister and I, so I was much younger, when they were all getting married and I was being dragged off to these weddings. The big hair, the big shoulders, all the lace, you know, it was right on point. Everything was where it needed to be. And I think they needed to continue to pull it through. I think we all agree, that would have been a better thematically, it would have been better. But I just think if you're gonna pick that, you stick with it. Or if you're just gonna be, hey, sometime after the Justice League, something's happening, and it could be that amorphous time like in the Incredibles. It's sort of that mid-century modern, but you don't know quite what time it is, but you can kind of get the sense of where it is. Would have taken some of that weight off of the film. and it could have had
Oh,
a lot more flexibility
and I do
to
understand
do
why
things.
it's a period set film, because they wanted to do it where the events of Justice League and all that stuff hasn't happened yet. This is before even Batman versus Superman. But as you say, once you've committed to especially a specific year, you kind of need to honor that and make sure you're getting your stuff right. I am not a person who minds like historical inaccuracies. Like, people will lecture me all day about the issues with things in films like Braveheart or Gladiator, and stuff like that. But those are, you're telling a story in a historical setting. And I can swallow like inaccuracies and stuff, because you're just wanting to, the filmmaker wants to put something on screen, they're going to put that thing on screen. This is different. You're taking a character and plopping her into a very specific year. It's in your title, and you're actually making a point that this film is set here. You want to get those details accurate, because that's kind of the whole point. It's it's a setting. It's not just an excuse to tell the story. You've chosen to set your film in that year. So even though it's not something that dragged the film down for me, because I don't have memories of the 80s. So what do I know? But as far as like, they did need to be accurate with that. It's, if that's the whole point of what you're doing, so better get it right.
I just think that and it's like an affinity to a certain time period. So for me, it's the 60s and 70s. But when I watched Stranger Things, I loved it. And the way that they integrated the 80s was plot relevant. Just
Perfectly
wish it
done.
was a little bit more plot relevant for this movie. The fact that they picked the 80s wasn't wrong. The fact that they kind of should have maybe leaned into it and stuck to it, yeah, definitely. But then also the feel is, I think, what matters. And if you create the feel,
Yeah.
then that's what is most important. And yeah, there are just these things that, are part of it that are very recognizable. And I think that, I would have loved to see some arcade scenes, maybe something with
Yeah.
Which
something
and they
very
drop
undeniably.
and they do drop in a shot of that. They just don't, they
Lean
don't
in.
lean
But
on. Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically
But
what we're trying to
I'm
say
gonna
here.
but I am gonna
But
say,
you're gonna push back, aren't you, John?
yeah, because I'm gonna say, like, honestly, like, that's not my issue with this movie. I get why it would be for some people.
But 1984 is in the title.
I know, but it's not like, I have bigger fish to fry as far as what the issues are with this movie. I'm sort of much more focused on where they went wrong in terms of the story, and and things that just don't play well at all, because the sort of setting of the film, it's I think it's perfectly valid completely for people to raise any issue with it. I'm just, for myself, I think the grievances I have lie elsewhere, but I will not begrudge anybody tearing the film apart for its inaccuracies.
Wow, this is blowing my mind how much you and Aaron are agreeing. I think that we got to wrap up. We got to cancel the channel. Thanks, guys. It's been a good year, but this is too weird for me. I'm resigning effective immediately.
So I'm gonna defend my grumpiness with the theme not sticking through, only because 1984 is a character. Just like the music, which was very not 1980s, but even when she went to the gym, okay, she had the little leg warmers. I'm sorry, the cardio divas were not lifting weights. The cardio divas were in the studios doing the endless cardio routines. That's what they did. So if you're going to hang your movie on an era, then you dang well better get it right and nail every last bit of it. And at the beginning, they were. And I love the juxtaposition of the ancient origins of Diana, which again, to what Amy pointed out, here we're going to set up all the lessons that then need to be paid off throughout the rest of the movie. And then, okay, here she is in the 80s, mid 80s, and you spend all that time with that Technicolor comic booky, over the top, very bright, colorful, aspects of it. I remember looking at it going, we didn't wear colors quite that bright. But it was fitting. And then it just kind of said, yeah, we're done with that.
See, I never got that impression. Like, it's not leaned into as much as the film progresses, but I never felt it was dropped.
It was dropped.
Well,
it was dropped like a hot rock.
You're outvoted
like a third.
But I also don't think that but I don't think that the film hinges on the identifiable hallmarks of the 80s. I think that the story is sort of what it hangs on, or
the title out of it, I would agree with you. But by virtue of the fact that they're trying to link this specifically to this particular era, them dropping it was a hindrance. I think it would have been easier if they took the title 84 out of it, because then they wouldn't have probably tried to bring in all of those stereotypical, let's go to Northern Africa and Soviet Russia and do all of this. I think it would have been better with the conflict between, here's Diana who can't let go, and here's Barbara who wants to get as far away from her past as possible. I think that's your story. Just leave 84 out of it. That's your story. Everything else, like we were saying, comes out.
But you have to set it somewhere at some time.
But it doesn't necessarily have to specifically say 1984. Not in the title of the movie. It could be.
Does Blade Runner 2049 have to have 2049 in the title?
But here's my thing. If you're going to specifically tie something to that, then you better nail those references to the wall. Like, for example, Ready Player One. Ready Player One works because the callbacks, the references, the games, the avatars, the look, the feel of when they're in the virtual world, because you're looking at the future where they're in favelas and everyone is all stacked on top of each other and they're escaping reality in the virtual world. But the escape that they're doing, I agree, Micah, just call it Wonder Woman 2.
But you do want people to be aware that I think it's in the title to make people aware that it's set in the past.
And they don't have to pick a year to do that. They didn't do it with Wonder Woman 1. They didn't say Wonder Woman 1940.
Guys, for the 50 millionth time, I'm agreeing with Carole on the stream.
I mean, the thing in the matter is...
Don't stop inviting her on, John. We're just going to gang up against you every time.
This is why I invite her on.
I will go down on this hill because...
She will go down with this ship.
I mean, if you want people to buy into what you're selling, have a broader...
I mean, that would have been an accurate title.
Yes, Electric Boogaloo. And it's funny, the guy who was, what's his name? Shabadoo, he just died. So bringing that up, we just lost him. Anyway, but I think be careful of the boxes that you put yourself in. Because if you can't then build that whole scenario out, you are going to get nailed to the wall because of it. And I think nailing themselves into just such a narrow focus of that particular year, if they weren't going to make the full commitment into it, that's what people are complaining about. Leave it a little bit broader to the 80s
I would
and keep
I
it
would
to Cheetah and Diana, because that's pretty much where your story is.
but aren't people complaining more about the missteps in the writing and the screenplay and where they chose to take this story, not
And
as
perhaps limiting it led to those missteps. Because
I
if you've
don't
got people who have no clue of what was going on in the mid 80s and they're trying to recreate this and then have to consistently keep that going, 3 words, Game of Thrones. Without source material, they just got,
we are not going down that road.
Don't
come
No,
on.
no,
John
no,
with
no, 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 no,
It's
no,
a
yeah.
no, no,
dark,
no, no.
Don't
lonely
get John started on this.
highway.
Which, by the way, you know
Welcome
what?
to the
This is
Hotel
something that John and I just won't talk about
California.
I will. Yeah,
Sorry.
one thing
We
I
want
will
to keep
talk
our
about
friendship. So
is that Jared and I just had an amazing watch party of the first 3 episodes of season 8.
bye,
We had a
Kelly.
ball,
Love you, girl.
and we are continuing on next week, and we're gonna have
Game of Thrones,
more of a
season
ball.
8.
Yeah.
Well, you just
So
keep
man.
having your fun, John. Ain't nobody gonna stop you.
Plot
Whatever.
holes,
Whatever.
time travel.
Time
Tyrion
travel.
becoming a dum-dum.
Wow.
All sorts of bad things. But we won't talk about this. Damn it.
It's all
We
right.
won't
You guys
talk
are free
about
to
it.
be wrong. Fine with me.
The delusional thinking that other people are wrong. We understand. You need to put something else in that orange juice, John.
I'm just water.
Make that OJ a screwdriver, dear, and then we'll really talk.
Or tequila sunrise.
Ooh.
Aaron,
Glass
you
Trinity.
but that's what makes me right, Aaron.
Oh no, it doesn't. Oh, honey,
If Aaron is
please,
saying
no,
something, then I just
no,
assume that I must,
no.
the opposite
You're
way must be
not.
right.
You're
We're
so not.
okay. We're
Let's
not.
wrap this shit
All
up.
right, we're done. We're done. No more Game of Thrones talk. Like at all. No. Wow.
Because
And
there are
I'm
2 people on this panel that are correct and 1 who isn't, and so it's really untenable, and we should just keep going.
so now it's fine for people you disagree with to be wrong. Okay. I will say, like, I'm looking at the chat, and I am absolutely not surprised at all by the comments that I'm seeing. And I'll just stop there. Wow. Okay. And we're
That's
wrapping
really
up.
fun to play on the violin, by the way.
I know. I've played it.
Oh, what do you play, Carol?
Violin.
You do? Hey,
I
we got
do.
2 violinists on this panel. That's awesome.
Okay. Anything more to say about Wonder Woman 1984?
I would say one thing that was, I guess, kind of poignant was watching the mother looking at the young daughter, going through this, knowing that she was going to get hurt and that she needed to go through that pain. And Diana discovering that same thing, but she was with Steve, who knew she had to discover this, who was willing to, and he told her, I've had a great life. And she's just like, I don't want to do this. And then skip ahead to the post credit where there's Asteria who was like, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm living life. I'm doing my Anthony Bourdain tour. I'm good. Other people can have that. I like how I'm wondering if Diana will find her one day, or is she purposely seeing Diana come near her? She's like, "Nope, you live the dream. I'm over here." I like how they tie that all together. And Linda Carter, that was just a beautiful callback. That was gorgeous.
That was really satisfying.
That was gorgeous.
Yeah. And I do agree. I hope, I feel like it sets it up for her to be in number 3, right? I mean,
God, I hope so.
That's not just
One-off.
a one-off. I would
not.
certainly hope not.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Aaron asked a question earlier. I see you, Aaron. She said, "Would we have a different standpoint on this if the pandemic hadn't happened? Like, would it change our experience with this movie?"
Well, I think she was specifically talking about something about the ending. Would
Mhm.
it feel
Oh, the faith in
differently?
humanity. That's an excellent question, Aaron. I think that's what you're talking about, Aaron. So please correct us if I'm wrong. But I think so, yes. And this is actually a great thing to talk about. So my faith in humanity has plummeted in 2020. And I think for a lot of people that is what happened. To give up just a little bit of your own personal, to be a little bit uncomfortable, such as wearing a mask, not going out, these kinds of things, not having 50 people over, and I've seen people not sacrifice for the greater good, and it has made me certainly have less faith in humanity. And I think that, so when I see people, everyone undoing their wishes, yeah, because if it came out in 2019, I would have maybe thought that was a smidgen more realistic. But right now, I really don't feel that way, especially because of where I'm from. Uh, you know, uh, my parents are in the state that has the most per capita cases right now, and my mom goes into the grocery store and only half people are wearing masks. And so I have really I've really changed the way that I see people. I generally can be an optimistic person, and 2020 just like slapped me in the face and then drop kicked me and then like twisted my boobie. Like, it's just not been great. It's come on, Carol, the old titty twister. Anyway, it's just not been great. And I think that has really did change the way that I saw the ending, and that I thought, no, it's just going to have to be that Maxwell Lord undoes his wish, and so all the wishes are undone. I really just can't believe that every single person would have undone their wish. I just can't see it.
I I have to say I don't expect um, complete reality in my comic book films. Oh God.
I'm sorry. I know, chat. You think, oh, she seems so happy and perky. Like, that's, I mean, my brain is actually quite dark. It really is.
Anyway, so I'm just gonna say, like, this movie chooses a message of hope for humanity, and yeah, I don't expect that from us in reality. I would not bet any odds on that whatsoever. But again, for the story, and when I'm watching a movie, I'm in another world basically, even if that world looks like ours. And so I didn't have a problem with it, and I don't know that that 2020 changed that for me. I actually don't think like I don't think humanity disappointed me in 2020. I think that I got what I expected from people in 2020. I think people kind of showed their true colors, um, but it wasn't unexpected to me. Maybe I'm. It's funny, people always call me Mr. Positive, but I think, I'm kind of talking about how I was already cynical enough about.
Were you hashtag disappointed but not surprised?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I shove that aside when I go back and I watch the 60s Star Trek, and I see the hope and the optimism and what they're going for. And so I feel like I approach this in a similar way. Yeah, when that happened, I was, there was a part of my brain that was like, yeah, that's impossible in the real world. But I let myself believe it for this because maybe I need to. Maybe it's just the part of me that needs to give myself over to a hopeful world where you could actually ask people to renounce their wish and they would do it.
That's really freaking beautiful, John.
There's a part of me that needs that. So yeah.
We're having some feels on Joe with live and on the air.
So this is interesting, the question. I love Aaron's question because I'm going to respond to this from a couple of levels. I was working on a project that wrapped in 2020, which was having to deal with racial and social equity in America. So, one of the things that came up in that kind of resonates for me is, as a Black woman in America, the thing that gave me satisfaction is that people who maybe willfully were blind to the realities of the world that are out there for folks that weren't like them, all of a sudden it became front page. This pandemic did it. Um, my boyfriend died from COVID. Um, all of the crap and the silliness and the ridiculousness that is a day to day for Black and brown people go, "Pfft, that's normal." That for others were like, how can that be happening? The fact that it was getting brought to the forefront for me was finally. So, pre-pandemic, silver lining, it provided a platform and an opportunity for people to focus on it. And for once, not to be dismissed, to be over explained, or for it to be dismissed. So maybe that's why I wish 1984, if it's going to pick this year and you're going to be focused on something, then go all in. Don't go halfway. Don't go quarter way. Don't go part of the way. Go all the way. Because there are those that aren't didn't live through the 80s as I did. I was in Boston. I was not home in DC, so I was laughing at, oh my God, the nostalgia of seeing Georgetown and seeing the various and sundry things. You know, there are those of us that missed the old post office pavilion that is now the Trump Hotel, and we're sad to see it go and hope that hotel goes. Um, that looking at this movie and looking at this from the perspective of the pandemic, um, if other people can have sensitivity to that, might have not have been your reality, but it was someone's. And it factors into the whole world. It factors into the whole the whole narrative. If I can try to figure out how to get some positivity out of the pandemic, is that 74 million people would not take their wish back. Is that the 80 million people who would understand that, to get out of our bubble, to get out of our comfort zones, to get uncomfortable, to move forward, because we can't make progress until we get uncomfortable. And one thing about the 80s that was true, too many people were trying to take a skip, take uh, an express pass to avoid many things. And how many parents in the 80s sacrificed raising their children because they had been lied to that just working hard, just making money, just being corporatized, and have someone else take your responsibilities. And we're dealing with it now. Yes, you may have to be home with your children, teaching them, raising them, being spending time with them. In the 80s, that wasn't the thing. Someone else did that. So how convenient in 2020 that that is a thing again. You now need to bond with your family, bond with your kids, bond with your friends, and understand that it is about everybody. Now, the one thing that was true in the 80s, it took all nations to realize that nuclear proliferation was going to kill us all. So that was one aspect that the movie did get right because it almost took us all out. This pandemic is doing that. And if everybody doesn't wear the mask, wash your hands, social distance, be vigilant, 320, no, 347,000 people died. We're going to hit 400,000 in this country. And I care about the one that I lost. But we have to care about all of them. That I care about the people who are walking around thinking, I don't have to be socially aware. I don't have to be connected to the environment. I don't have to be politically engaged. So, yeah, Aaron, I watched this movie from a different perspective. Some was humor, because, like I said, the big hair and the shoulder pads and the break dancing and the Pop Tarts. But then I was a little disappointed that if you're going to go there, go all the way there. Because if you're not going to go all the way there, we are destined to continue to make these mistakes. Oppenheimer knew that. So I made a note that in 1984, there was a group that Gordon Sumner used to belong to. You know him as Sting. He went out on his own and he released an album called The Dream of Blue Turtles. And his rockumentary was called Into the Night. There is a song on that album. If you can, it's on YouTube. You can watch it. If you please do. The music is fabulous. Omar Hakim, Kenny Kirkland, Sting. I mean, the musicians were beautiful on that. He left the police behind, which was 80s, and went into this new aspect of his musicianship. He's a bass player, by the way. And he wrote a song called Russians. And the hook in that song was, we hope that Russians love their children too. And it was talking about nuclear proliferation in the 80s, in 1984. So, long-winded answer, I know, and I apologize for that. But if we don't learn from 1984 how close we came to killing everything on this planet in 2020, in a new century, that if we don't get our collective poop together, we're not going to make it. So if for me, I would have liked to have seen a little more of the development of Barbara wrestling with that. It was a little too clean. It was a little too fast. It was a little too neat for me. I enjoyed watching Diana wrestle with it because they developed it all the way through. I think they could have taken the time, even if Barbara was like, nope, don't care. With Maxwell, it was because his ultimate goal was to leave something for his son. And then he got caught up and he got sucked in because the monkey's paw will do that. But for Barbara, I think we missed an opportunity there. And I hope that they pick it up down the road somewhere in the third movie. I hope they do. But all of this was to say that if we were able to learn a lesson that everybody having a nuke is not a good thing, and that rationale that if everybody has a nuke, nobody will shoot a nuke off. Nope, it takes one nut. So if you look at the pandemic, it takes one idiot thinking, yeah, this isn't important, or a well-meaning person not to understand that the sacrifice now means that we all get to live later. That's why it was significant for me. And with that, I get off my soapbox.
I would thank you, Carol. And I know that wasn't easy. I want to thank you for that. And I don't imagine that there's anything else to say. So unless anyone has any final words, I'll go ahead and
Oh,
say,
please do something more upbeat than me. Please. I don't want to end it on this.
um, yeah. And, I honestly, I would love to, Carol, but I don't know what I could possibly add.
I'm
I'll
kind
put
of in
it.
the same boat there.
Yeah.
I think that message, even though you might think it sounds negative, I think is important. And
Yeah.
that's what, I've lost a cousin, but that's nowhere near what I know others have lost. And I think that our lack of understanding of being a globalized society and being a global community bites us in the butt every time. And we need to care about the individual as well. And so yeah, I can't say anything more except for that. You know, selfishness hurts everyone.
Well, I like what Micah just typed. Well, shit, Diana.
That is one way to end it.
I mean, that line was perfect because
Yeah.
of everything you're going to share. Radar might have been one you wanted to
Yeah.
share. So to get this off of this, I will say that I thought it was my engineering head was like, how in the hell did he get in that modern plane, considering he was in a 1940s
It was like a
airplane
40-year
and
difference,
able
and
to
it
figure
did
that
show
out
him a little bit confused. Like, how do I do this? How do I do that? And then
for
like 5 seconds
5
later, it's like, I
seconds?
got it.
And
It's
why
like,
is there fuel in it?
yeah. Yeah, they would not really have had those planes because they were on display. They wouldn't have necessarily had them fueled up. So he did just little things. My mom worked for the FAA, so aviation is, and my dad works for the Air Force repairing planes. So aviation's a little bit in my head.
When
So
you've
it's like,
learned to
yeah, no.
when you've learned to accept Denethor running 50 yards after being set aflame,
Leroy
I,
Jenkins thing.
I can pretty much swallow any lapse in logic. So
I'm sorry, Denethor doing Leroy Jenkins from Connecticut to Florida and still managed to go off the edge of the city of Gondor. That and the real estate agent who sold Gondor to the Gondorians. I have a place. It's got a view.
It's real nice.
It's real cheap. It's a fixer-upper.
And if you want to hear these great Carol takes, she was on for pardon me, Fellowship of the Ring and Two Towers, correct?
Yeah,
Yes.
which you didn't
Yeah.
get to join us for Return of the King and go on about that.
You
No.
didn't want to be on for 4.5 hours, Carol? I mean,
No,
come on.
actually did, but the pupper was, yeah, Pepper got sick.
Gotta take care of your sweetie.
Yeah, she got sick, and I don't think you all would have appreciated what I was having to do to keep her comfortable during a live stream. It's like, Carol, what is that?
But
Don't mind me. I'm just airing out the house. Don't mind the dog.
She's a cutie.
She's asleep.
but
She's upside down asleep.
Oh, like on her back. Oh, so cute.
yeah, just bring you back for a second. I do want to once again say thank you for sharing all that, Carol. It feels like it's not saying nearly enough to say that I think you have all of our condolences and yeah,
Absolutely.
anything I say will just
No,
it
he
won't
was
be
he
enough.
was a
So
good dude. He was a nerd. You know, he loved my geekiness. We met at Georgetown. Funny thing is, we met at Georgetown, so I, he would have thoroughly enjoyed the references to Sam Goody and Commander Salamander. I was telling somebody in the chat, I used to have one of the baseball shirts with the long sleeves, and it had Commander Salamander all the way down the long sleeve. So yeah, wearing a long sleeve shirt to show that in the summer in DC in the swamp. Yeah, you're wearing a long sleeve shirt in July, but it's Commander Salamander. But it's awesome.
I do want to say I did also this time watching the movie. I caught those stores and like when they showed like a Walden Books. It's not quite as those were around up until not too long ago, but it did.
JC Penney was around until literally this last year.
Yesterday.
Dang it, JC Penney. That was my favorite place to shop. I'm so mad.
Well, Lord and Taylor just closed.
Yeah, it's not great. If Crate and Barrel goes down, my dad will just, I don't know what he's going to do.
Yeah, so as I said, I can't possibly think of anything to add. I think we've covered the important aspects of the film. We talked about a lot of important areas, and thank you again, Carol. And just for saying all that. I think it was very important. And
you're a wonderful guest, and making yourself, opening your heart to us like that was really touching.
That was a great question by Aaron, because if you think about everything in a sense, watching it from the perspective of, post-pandemic, pre-pandemic, how do you appreciate things? Like there is a TV show on CBS Access. I refuse to buy another streaming service, so I'll have to wait to see it. But they've redone Stephen King's The Stand. And I remember being in Boston in the 80s, reading that book, and about 4 chapters in, getting a runny nose, closing the book, putting the book away. It was like, that's okay. But it was fun watching this movie. It was entertaining watching just where Patty Jenkins is trying to go with this. And like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first one more than the second, but I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed where she's trying to go with this. And I agree with you, John. Pedro Pascal is like the guy right now. He is like killing it on so many levels. And I loved him in Narcos. I had watched that a while back, and
he's making all of us
loved
cry
him.
on the Mandalorian.
Well, I loved him as Oberyn, the Red Viper, because I just
Oh my
loved
God.
him.
No one else could ever have played the Red Viper that well.
It was
He
I saw a
embodied
meme
Oberyn
where they
Martell.
said, as the Mandalorian, he learned from the Red Viper to wear a helmet as they showed the mountain gouging his eyes out. But I love Pedro Pascal. He's killing it right now.
I
He's
do love those
killing
memes going, Michael wants to, we're throwing up that line. I love all the memes going around with that
Yes.
line. It's just gold. And, it's like, I want,
Very
like,
memeable.
Pedro, he's very much becoming a known quantity now, but like just seeing the different stuff that he can do, I want him to just soar to all kinds of heights. I hope he just becomes, even, more acclaimed and more famous. He deserves it. He's doing great.
He is.
But yeah.
But John, I didn't want to bring down the energy. I'm sorry for that.
No, please.
No need to apologize, Carole.
Do not even, don't even consider
No
apologizing.
apologizing on Joe with allowed.
Yeah. Obviously, I mean, by what I was going on about earlier, no apologizing at all. But yeah, that you are always welcome on this channel, and I hope that you come back for even more discussions. It would be an absolute honor to have you back, as always.
Well, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed it. I've had a really good time with the panels and everything, and I love the topics that you've picked, with the exception of Rankin Bass.
But we had so much fun.
We're gonna be fighting about Rankin Bass. Oh my god!
But I have had certain people tell me though that was their favorite stream, just because it went all over the place. And
yes, it did.
Was that the pardon my ignorance, that was the Hobbit animated, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, just checking.
With Cat Smaug.
With Cat Smaug.
I see you want a dragon, but how about a cat that sort of looks like a dragon?
Dragon not. If you want to watch a really good movie, I don't know if you're able to find it. Ralph Bakshi's Wizards. That one, it got banned, and two, it's one of the best animated features just for complexity and composition, and it's amazing because it deals with two brother wizards arguing between technology versus nature, sort of like Sauron and Gandalf. But it just goes into so much darkness and society, and it was just amazing. So, I saw where they were trying to go with Rankin Bass, and it was around about that same time. But I just loved how much you just loved Rankin Bass, and we were just like, no, we're not.
But
no,
that's what everybody loves about me, my never-ending positivity. But actually, we're not going to do a whole in-depth conversation, but like, since given your reaction to that and what you were just talking about with Ralph Bakshi, what is your opinion on his Lord of the Rings, or his half of Lord of the Rings?
Bakshi?
Yeah.
I actually enjoy him because he is very non-standard. He very much likes to shock, shake up, and retwist the world. So I like Ralph Bakshi in the sense that he is a very non-standard animator. And he doesn't do anything that is cutesy Saturday morning or anything of that level, because he wants to shock and to titillate. He did a movie called Coonskin, and it got banned. And it is so topical for today. But I just enjoy the fact that his shock value of what he did, and the way he did it. I believe my issue with Rankin Bass was that, now, if you want to watch Hillbilly Bears or something that's more along the lines of, animation, okay, great. I mean, the animation is great. They are really attention to detail, great. Just not Tolkien. It's
Yeah.
very true to the book. Give him that. But I was like, you took this on? You did The Year Without a Santa Claus. You took this on? Whereas Bakshi was like, I'm not trying to apologize or trying to do anything cutesy. I'm trying to shock the crap out of you. And I appreciate that.
Well, it's
You know,
funny because what you say about Rankin Bass, which I'd agree to a certain extent, because there's some stuff in there that's very untolkien. But I would say the same about Bakshi. I don't think that his film really, even though his depictions of some things are certainly closer, it doesn't evoke Tolkien to me.
no. And he wasn't, I don't think he was trying to.
Yeah.
Bakshi never did the expected. It was his take on, because even his movie Wizards, it doesn't look like anything you would ever expect a wizard to look like. And he did it on purpose, which is why I appreciate him. It's like, Tex Avery. Tex Avery did everything he needed.
You knew I was going to put that up, Amy.
I mean, I was just letting the chat know that if I look uncomfortable, it's because I gotta piss really bad.
Well, because, and we're just going on to other topics now. But no, the reason why I asked was that actually might be interesting to do a discussion sometime on Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, which I would not be positive about. So,
I would expect you to be, and
yeah.
I would not be mad. I love Ralph Bakshi. I just adore what he does. I just really appreciated that he just stepped out there. And if you ever get a chance to watch Coonskin.
Yeah, I do want to check out a number of his movies, because I actually think where Lord of the Rings falls apart is actually once.
Okay, I can't hold it. I'll be right back.
Okay. Sorry. Is once they start giving it over to just basically, running out of money with the animation, and it's, very identifiably live action. That's just sort of, there's some effect thrown over it to make it look like it's part animation, but it's not really. I think that's where it's just falls apart.
Yeah, that's very Bakshi.
Yeah, I think that the stuff that's actually animated is beautiful. It's not quite what I want for Lord of the Rings, but I actually think there's a lot that's quite beautiful. And so it's not to say I wouldn't have any positive things to say about it, but overall I'd probably be dunking on it. But my point being was that liking some of the stuff in that film from an animation perspective makes me want to see some of his other work.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's why I said probably the one that I will recommend for you is Wizards.
Okay.
Because it has that kind of a Sauron Gandalf battle, especially where he's at Orthanc and, he's tearing down all the trees, and his rationale for why he's doing what he's doing gets picked up by Bakshi. I wouldn't even be surprised, and I would have to do research into that informed Wizards. Just that one little piece, he took it and plucked it out and said, what would happen if there would be a wizard battle on nature versus industrialization? What would that be like? And it's just gorgeous. Now, people who are looking for traditional animation, this ain't that, and it works.
Yeah.
It really, really works. So I would say if you've not seen it, I would recommend that you find Wizards and watch it. I think you might be surprised, or you might hate it. Whatever.
Well, either way. And and actually part of my New Year's resolution is to make more time for watching stuff that's not strictly for the next stream coming up. So,
Parks and Rec.
I'll get to it, Amy.
You say that.
You've not seen Parks and Rec?
I haven't.
Right? Cancel him. John, this is the first time I usually get canceled. John Webster has been
It
canceled
was
from his
bound to happen sooner or later. And I'm
right?
kind of shocked it hasn't happened for other things.
Community? Have you seen Community?
I haven't.
Out of here, John.
Okay, so that's all for today. But no, like we're coming up on 3 hours. Like I crashed and burned on the time for this one. I just real quick, we'll sort of breeze through what's coming up again next week. Amy and I will be talking about the Keira Knightley film A Dangerous Method. After that, it's Mean Girls, then X-Men, and then Pan's Labyrinth. So tune in for those. And tomorrow on Here Be Dragons, Amy will be joining me as well as, why am I drawing a blank? Oh my God, I can't think. Mikal, sorry. If you're watching, I'm terribly sorry. And she'll be joining us to talk about Yennefer from The Witcher. So that's going to be a whole lot of fun.
And she does the podcast of Surprise with Kyle and Aziz. So she's got her Witcher cred over there. So
yeah. It's going to be great. It's going to be so much fun. Amy, what do you have coming up?
Lots of stuff. Please just subscribe to my channel, follow me on Twitter, and you'll know all the things. I'm not going to, I do A Song of Ice and Fire and His Dark Materials, and I'm going to start doing some Witcher, Avatar: Last Airbender, and once again, The Poppy War, which you need to read. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I don't think you've mentioned that before.
I may have never mentioned that. But yeah, for those of you that don't know me, just real quick, I'm a PhD student who studies Chinese literature. That's kind of my thing. So I look at Western fantasy and I kind of put the Eastern spin on it and see what I can do. But I always have people on the channel talking to me about my essays and about the topics of my essays. I've had some really great guests. Please check out the 4 videos that I uploaded for December. This guy over here was on one of them for my first ever episode of Buddy Banter. So please check that out. Watch it. Yes, that's where I have a friend talk about whatever they want to talk about. Micah just texted me with his idea for Buddy Banter. So it's happening.
Which, by the way, you don't even have to go anywhere to get that episode. I have a link for it right here on this channel under guest appearances. So it's like, John. So it's like you have no excuse. Watch the video. It's great.
John gets all personal over there about his life, so you should watch it. And I think we had a really good time. The chat was really active. We had a wonderful time. That was my first time going live on my channel with a guest, and of course, I had to have my buddy John on for the first time. And it was literally just going to be a one-off video with him. And I thought I could totally make a series out of this because I have so much free time, y'all. So I realized why not just start a monthly / pseudo monthly, we'll see what happens, series. So
yeah. And I also want to say, like, because it hasn't gotten nearly enough views, another stream that Carole and I did together was on the film Alien, which we both love. And like, y'all, I better see those view counts go up on that video because her and I had an amazing time. So go back and watch.
Scott.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that was a fun stream. I love that movie so much. Y'all just don't know.
We said, Carole was on our first 2 out of 3 of the Lord of the Rings streams. Please check that out. I am the least amount of Tolkien nerd, so see me make some stupid mistakes live. It's real fun.
It always is. No.
Mean.
No.
He knows I can take it.
Yeah, like, no. If I didn't know that, I'd be terrified to even go there. Yeah. So, like, yeah, that's all I'll say. Carole, I'll let you go ahead and have the last word. Tell people where they can find you and anything else you want to say. Go ahead.
I am unfortunately in work hell the next month to 6 weeks. But I am in the process of trying to create an Instagram channel, the DC Diva Travels. I'm trying to do things that are interesting to me, food, um, places around the world that I've been, things that are just kind of funny. My mom, who will be 97 next month, if everything is kind and wonderful and she makes it, keeps trying to threaten me into opening at least a restaurant or some sort of a cooking channel. Um, I'll have to post up my picture of the luck meal that we did, but I'm trying to do that because it's something that I'm passionate about. That'll be just for me, and my nieces and nephews were encouraging it. Hopefully, after work is less crazy, I'll get a chance to get into do more things that are fun and lovely. But for the most part, you might find me do cool things with cool people like John and Amy when they think to include me. But otherwise, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, but I'm pretty low key.
Pretty Loki.
Pretty low key. Little
Well,
horns.
yeah, we better watch out for you then. But no.
Hey, I have a demon dog. What do you want?
But okay, yeah, I just want to say thank you again, Carol, and thank you, Amy, as always. This, I think it goes without saying, this conversation went places that I don't think we expected. And I couldn't be happier. Thank you for being such an amazing guest, Carol. And
We always love having you, Carol.
Yeah.
Please come on again.
Oh, thanks.
And yeah, so I will, with that, we'll say goodbye, and I'll just apologize if I angered anybody with my Game of Thrones comments. But you're not going to change me, so get over it. We will see you guys later. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.